and welcome to the Beatles Hamburg. My name is Spencer Lee. I'm from BBC Radio Merseyside in Liverpool, and I'm particularly anxious to explore the links between Liverpool and Hamburg. One of the places we'll be doing that is at the Museum of Hamburg History. We're going to be going right round the St Pauli area and looking at the various Beatles sites that are there. We'll be going down the Reeperbahn, down the Große Freiheit, seeing the clubs that the Beatles played at, the Indra, the Kaiserkeller, the Top 10 and the Star Club. In fact, they're the only band to have played at all four clubs. The central station is quite crucial to the Beatles' development because they came here quite a bit. And in November 1960, George Harrison came here in his own. He was only 17 years old and he'd been deported for lying about his age and working really in one of the vice dens of Europe. We'll be finding out all about that later. But first I want to show you a little known Beatles site that is only round the corner from here that many people don't know about. So here we are at 57 Kirchen Alley, covered in scaffolding unfortunately at the moment, but on the 5th floor there was a recording studio, the acoustic studio, that went in the 1970s. Why is this important in the Beatles story? Well, the reason is that in October 1960, Rory Storm and the Hurricanes and the Beatles were playing on the same bill at the Kaiserkeller. And Alan Williams, who was the agent who'd arranged for them to be in Hamburg, was there. And he thought that they sounded very good when they were actually all jamming on stage together. So he said, let's go to a very cheap recording studio and see what you sound like. Now, who turned up? Well, from the Beatles we had John, Paul and George, and from Rory Storm and the Hurricanes we had Ringo Starr and Lou Walters. 5 musicians, and it was the first time that John, Paul, George and Ringo had played together on a record. The songs they recorded included Fever, September Song and Summertime, and about 4 or 5 copies were made. Alan Williams had a copy and he lost his copy in a pub in London. Nobody knows where the copies are now. Possibly Paul McCartney has got one, but I don't think so because I think he would have included a track on the Beatles anthology. If anybody has got any of those copies, they would be worth about £50,000 today. And I'm optimistic that one of them is going to turn up sometime and we will actually hear John, Paul, George and Ringo playing together for the first time in October 1960 in Hamburg at the acoustic studio. I'm afraid there's no recording studio to show you here, but what we're going to do now is to go to St Pauli on the Underground and go to the Museum of Hamburg History first of all. Just to clear things up in my own mind, the Beatles had 6 stints really in Germany, so all in all they played 277 days in the St Pauli area and 800 hours on stage. Well, I've alighted at St Pauli station and our first stop is going to be the Museum of Hamburg History, where we're going to look at the exhibition of the Hamburg Sound, and I'm going to be talking to my good friend Ulf Krueger. Okay, so I'm now going in through the door of the Hamburg Sound exhibition. And we're going to be guided by my dear friend Ulf Krueger. He's a songwriter, he's worked with Lonnie Donegan, made 2 LPs with Lonnie Donegan. And here he is, Ulf Krueger, how great to see you. Yes. And you are an expert, you wrote this lovely little guide to the Beatles Hamburg, and you're going to be taking us around the Reeperbahn later on. Yeah, and definitely. First of all, we're going to be looking at this marvellous exhibition, and let's take a look just at what's in the first cases and see how it goes. Yeah. Okay? That's what we definitely will. So, let's have a look here first of all. Now, this is end of the war, British soldiers in Hamburg, am I right?
Yeah, in front of the town hall. And these gentlemen brought swing music to Hamburg, which wasn't allowed before 45 in Germany, and you even could come to the concentration camp if you listened to that sort of music.
So some Germans were actually put in concentration camps for playing Glenn Miller records?
Yes, right.
God, that's astonishing, isn't it?
Yeah.
Still, it was the music of the enemy, wasn't it? Yes.
Yeah. And we had a group of young people in Hamburg called the Swing Jugend, which means youth. And they grew longer hair and so on and listened to swing music at night and so on. Very dangerous. And now it was official again.
Yeah. And we've now got the disc jockeys who are English people. In fact, I recognise him.
Yes.
That's Alexis Corner, a young Alexis Corner.
He called himself Alec then, and Alexis later.
Right.
Yeah.
And so he was working as a disc jockey in Germany.
Yes, for BFBS. And there's a gentleman who became very famous in Germany, also English of course. His name is Chris Howland, and he introduced myself, for example, to pop music on the radio, of course.
Now, this is going to prepare us for the Reeperbahn later on, I can see. This looks like the Germany version of the English magazine Health and Efficiency.
Yes, that's right. And you see, music always was in the amusement quarter.
Yes.
Like, let me say, Storyville in New Orleans or Soho in London. So traditional jazz that followed swing in Hamburg was played on Reeperbahn.
Yes.
And you see, this is Stern Cinema on Große Freiheit, later to become the Star Club.
Ah, right.
That's in the 50s, of course. This is a couple of German Schlager stars, middle of the road singers.
Yes.
Looking very much like they did before the end of World War II.
And Schlager is really music of your parents' generation.
No, not really. They still call it Schlager today. It's what you call middle of the road.
Yes.
Just, middle of the road.
I mean, a lot of the songs seem to be about going on holiday and being sunbathing and things.
Yeah, that's right. They sang about Italy because many German people lost their youth in World War II, so they longed to be at the beach and so on. You see?
Now here's a little English joke that Johnny Sincere, that's Johnny Sincere, and it's Hot Five.
Yeah, but that's his real name. He's from New Orleans. That was his real name. Anyway, a very important person in traditional jazz in Hamburg was Ken Collier from England. Yes. He played the Reeperbahn in a little club called New Orleans. He played very close to the later to become Star Club.
Yes. Now he had the most, and that's his trumpet.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. Now he had about the most devoted fans in the world, Ken Collier.
Oh yes.
Ken Collier fans didn't like anybody else, and in fact, Ray Ennis of the Swinging Blue Jeans told me that when Ken Collier played the Cavern, the Swinging Blue Jeans were supporting him, and they were a jazz band themselves in those days. And when the Blue Jeans came on, all the people who were sitting in the chairs in the front turned their chairs around, and everybody was sitting with their backs to the Swinging Blue Jeans because all they wanted was Ken Collier.
Yeah, it's still a bit like that in traditional jazz circles in Hamburg today.
Yes, yes.
But anyway, look, he was very important. Even a record called Ken in Hamburg came out. And look at that poster. Yes. The banjo player, he still looks like a black ape.
And Chris Barber, I believe, was so popular in Hamburg. Didn't they name a street for him or something?
No, they renamed Hamburg.
Hamburg?
Yes, because Hamburg was called Freie und Hansestadt, which means free, and Hanse is a word for doing sea trade, right? And they called it Freie and Barberstadt. The fans, of course, not the government. So Chris Barber became very popular in Hamburg, and his banjo player, Lonnie Donegan, brought skiffle officially to Hamburg. Ken did before, but it was not realized in that huge way. But Lon brought skiffle to Hamburg, and the skiffle craze from England came to Hamburg, and skiffle was very important in Hamburg then, by the mid of the 50s.
Yes. Same as it was in England.
Yeah.
I mean, I always feel that the youth of that time didn't have a great deal of money, and so instruments like the washboard and the tea-chest bass were very easy to acquire. When they got a bit of money, they could play rock and roll with the electric instruments and the like. Yeah. Whereas in America, I think the youth had more money. And therefore you have bands like the Beach Boys just going straight to electric guitars and not bothering with skiffle.
Yeah, that sounds very plausible. And I think skiffle is very important for the development of beat music, because nearly everybody in England was in a skiffle group at a certain time.
Yes.
And they had very basic abilities to play, I think. But then later, when they developed a bit, they picked up the rock and roll stuff that was a bit more complicated than the original skiffle stuff. Yes. And then they had the rough way of playing skiffle brought into the very elegantly played rock and roll from America, because there were educated musicians who played.
Yes.
And so a mixture of skiffle and rock and roll, to me, seems to be beat.
Yes.
That came to Germany.
Yes, I mean, Lonnie Donegan was terribly important. He's really been overlooked. I mean, he is highly rated, but not highly rated enough, I don't think. Now, here's our old friend Bill Haley and his Comets performing at the Ertsmerch Halle. I think the Beatles performed there too, didn't they?
Yes, later. But Bill Haley performed there in '58, and it was a big scandal because Teddy Boys, called rockers here, destroyed about 10 or 20 little chairs, you see? So that was a big scandal and a big riot. And so Hamburg authorities banned rock and roll from Hamburg, and they didn't want it anymore. But they even didn't like traditional jazz because it was too wild.
But from what I gather from talking to, say, Jerry and the Pacemakers, there was a fight in the top 10 club almost every night.
Yeah, that was... of course, later in the 60s.
I see.
But Bill Haley was a scandal, and they didn't like rock and roll for a while. But later, you see, rock and roll was not really big in Germany because they still had this Schlager stuff on the radio, and they didn't have any TV at all. So they created their own German rock and roll singers.
Yes.
This guy... Ted Herold, even his name sounds...
Look at the hair, that's doing a Cliff Richard, isn't it?
Yeah.
And orchestra with Bert Camford, who we're going to come across later on.
Yeah, he was a big band leader then. This is Ted's original little guitar from the old days. And so we had a bit of German rock and roll as well, but it was not the real thing.
Yeah. I mean, I always get the impression that because German words tend to be longer than English ones, it's actually very hard to sing rock and roll in German, isn't it? Because the lyric is going to be that much longer.
Yeah, that's true. So these are some of the so-called Schlager singers again. Still by the end of the 50s, still very, how do you say that? Conventional looking. And this is a symbol for the end of traditional jazz in Hamburg. This is, let me have a look, when was it? No.
1960 or so?
It's the turn of the centuries.
Yes.
And this is Abi Hübner and his jazz band playing in front of the town hall. And that's by the end of the 50s. Just a lot of people watching, but this is the sign of the 60s already. Klaus Voormann, later to become a Grammy winner, 2 Grammys, who designed the Revolver cover. He designed a couple of traditional jazz covers already. And this makes us turn to go to the next room, because this is the introduction to something new.
Okay, thank you. Well, Ulf, there's a very authoritative sign here. I know verboten means forbidden, so this is telling you not to do something.
Yeah, it means the times of village music are over.
Right.
And that was printed on the first poster of the Star Club. We just put it here because it's a very impressive sentence. Times of village music are over.
This meant the Star Club was going to be big business. Big names were going to come to the Star Club.
But it comes a bit later. This is just as a sign. Right?
Okay, well, let's go into the body of the exhibition now.
Yes.
And let's see what we've got here. A nice family sitting room, a bit like ours in the 1950s, actually.
Yes.
The old television set and everything.
And that's what it is. And now people who are younger than us can imagine why we try to escape. You see?
Right.
The TV is not on right now, but of course it's showing the typical 50s middle of the road stuff we didn't like, because we all, people of my generation, started with traditional jazz and skiffle, and then were fascinated by rock and roll. And rock and roll was on Reeperbahn over there.
Right. Okay. And we've got some fashions here, fashions of the 50s too.
Yes, and on the walls we have other things accompanying music, because you see, life was going on.
Khrushchev coming to Germany. Yeah.
And the wall and all this sad stuff. And over there, every Beatle fan, of course, knows that when the Beatles arrived in Hamburg, they first played at the Indra, and then they played immediately the Kaiserkeller.
Yes.
And this is a reprint, I have to say, of the first poster mentioning the Beatles in Hamburg.
With Rory Storm getting the top billing. Yes.
The Beatles, England, Liverpool.
Right.
And these are the original doors of the Kaiserkeller.
Right. Let's just have a look at these doors. Because, you know, they're pretty thick, aren't they? They're solid doors. And,
They are.
Yeah.
So,
And this is the original door, you say? I mean, it's in beautiful condition, isn't it?
yeah, they restored it in a way, I think. Yeah.
Very, very good indeed.
Yeah.
It's great. I mean, how was this actually discovered, these doors?
Dr. Ortwin Peltz of the museum, he discovered the doors somewhere on Reeperbahn. Somebody had them in his cellar. Somebody who worked on Reeperbahn in the old days.
Marvellous. Okay, well, let's move on to the next exhibit.
This is, in a way, symbolic as a door to Reeperbahn and rock and roll.
So when we actually go to the Kaiserkeller later on, we're not going to see doors like this. Right.
And look over here.
Yep.
Klaus Forman, he made a sketch or a drawing of the old St. Pauli, mentioning all the clubs, Bambi, Kino, Kaiserkeller, Indra.
Right. So later on, the Hamburg Museum is sort of over here, isn't it?
Yes, right.
And we're going to be walking down the Reeperbahn, going to the Große Freiheit, and I think somewhere around here, John Lennon had his picture taken in a shop doorway, didn't he?
Yeah, it's a bit out of the picture,
right.
but you're right,
Yeah.
that direction. And this is a nice introduction to people who are not that familiar with the Beatles story, to have a look, oh, they've been there.
Yeah.
You see? Maybe you heard of a future Beatleplatz, Beatles Square in Hamburg, and this is the location where it will be. The Beatles Square.
But there's been quite a lot of controversy about that in the English press, because it was said that there was going to be a statue there with Ringo Starr in it, as opposed to having Pete Best.
It's a lot of rumors. We are just collecting money to build a square like that, and the statue, yes or no, and things like that are discussed later. You see, so I think that all that trouble was in vain.
And you think it will happen? Will it?
Yeah, we've got a lot of money already, but we need more.
Okay.
And the square will be here. This is Große Freiheit, where three of the important clubs in Hamburg used to be. The Indra, the Kaiserkeller, and the Star Club.
Right.
Over here are a couple of things from the beginning of the 60s, from these clubs.
Yeah.
Little thing from the Indra, from the top 10, hand drawing as an advertising for rock and roll, right? Little matchbox from the Kaiserkeller, and at the Star Club, before it was the Star Club, was an erotic nightclub. Just a few hints.
Yes. Yes, I'm sure we'll find out much more about that later on.
Oh yes.
Okay. And we're coming to another display cabinet here. And let's have a look at this one. Oh, little Peggy Marsh, who did I Will Follow Him. And she was a big artist in Germany, wasn't she?
Yes, she really was. And this is saying that Schlager music, still in the 60s, was very important in Germany. It was not gone. That's Union magazine. And they are saying that the work songs of the colored people are sort of destroyed by German lyrics put to these tunes and have nothing to do with the working class people and so on. And so-called Schlager singers are responsible for everything. And the Schlager singers are those gentlemen. The Beatles performing at the top 10, they didn't even know who they were. And in one copy of Mersey Beat, Paul said that they already had been in a magazine in Germany. And that's this magazine saying they are Schlagersingers, wasting these
so
good songs.
If they really knew what it was saying, they wouldn't have been too happy about it. Right.
That's it.
And just before we leave this display, Ulf, I notice there's a timeline for 1962 here, and for February the 17th, 1962, it says a severe flood kills 317 people in Hamburg.
Oh, yeah.
Now, this is just before the Star Club opened. A lot of English bands would be there. No one has ever mentioned this to me, actually. Was this actually in that area? Or?
Oh yes, it was, of course, the harbour area.
Yeah.
I think the musicians didn't mention it because they came later, and no damages anymore. And so nobody told them, and they were interested in their music and having a few and things like that.
Right. Let's now have a look at this motorbike, and you can tell us why this is here, a Florette motorbike.
Yes, I don't know how it was in England, but German rockers, teddy boys, used to drive around on these mopeds, as we called them, because they couldn't afford real motorcycles, right? Or motorbikes, not cycles.
Yeah. Yeah, I thought it looked a sort of a fairly cheap machine, you know.
Yes,
certainly.
it was.
Yeah.
It was.
And so there are a lot of these around Hamburg. And nowadays around Hamburg we see piles and piles of cyclists, don't we?
Yeah, it's changed.
Yeah. Right, now let's have an art studio here. This must be Astrid's art studio.
Yes, because when the Beatles started playing Hamburg, first at the Indra, then at the Kaiserkeller, they met Astrid, Klaus and Jürgen Vollmer, the so-called Hamburg Exes from existentialists. Right? And as we all, or most of us know, Stuart was a brilliant painter.
Yeah, and the existentialists always dressed in black, didn't they?
Yeah, they did.
Yeah.
And when they met, the Beatles and the so-called Exes, Stuart fell in love with Astrid. He moved into her flat in Eimsbüttlerstraße 45A. And in the attic, he had a little studio to paint when he was still in the band. And later, he became a full-time artist. He painted and painted many, many things in this attic. And here it is, in a very simple way, but look, that's Stuart in the original attic, in front of the painting.
Taken by Astrid.
Yeah.
Her typical style with that blend of light and shade, very, very effective.
And those are three original paintings by Stuart. This is a portrait of John Lennon he did. That's an abstract thing. And this is a portrait of Astrid he painted as a Christmas present for Astrid's mother.
Right.
And that's very rare because he signed it. He didn't sign his paintings very often.
And he painted in so many different styles, didn't he?
Yeah. This he did in a way, do you say naturalistic?
Yes.
Yes, because it was for Astrid's mother.
Yeah.
To recognize something, you see? And later, when Stuart had passed away, he passed away 3 days before the opening of the Star Club in Hamburg, when he was very, very young. Very sad story. And during their stint at the Star Club, John and George asked Astrid to shoot their photos or take their photographs in the same position at Stuart's attic when he already had gone.
And now we're going to come, I suppose, to the body of the exhibition, which is a celebration of the Star Club.
Yes.
And above our heads here, 13th of April 1962, that'll be the poster for the opening of the Star Club.
Yes, exactly.
And you've got the Beatles there as the main act, actually. And you've got Roy Young, who was a British rock and roll singer associated with the TV show Drumbeat. And what about the other people on the bill? Oh, we've got Tony Sheridan.
Tony came a bit later, about 2 weeks later.
Oh, I see, in May, yes.
And Jerry and the Pacemakers as well.
Okay, and let's just have a look at this display board here.
We tried to reconstruct the original display boards of the Star Club. They looked like this. And over the years, I collected a lot of stuff from the old days, now here in the museum. It's original publicity cards, it's Eintrittskarten.
Tickets, entrance tickets, yes.
And a menu from the Star Club. And these little signs are painted by a gentleman called Erwin Ross, who painted the original signs for the displays in the 60s.
And many of the little handout photographs there, publicity photographs are signed as well, which is rather nice.
Bill Haley, for example, is about $400 to $600 in America now. Signed.
Now, some of these stars clubs have 6 stars on, and some have 5.
Yeah.
And there's a reason for that, presumably.
It is. Remember the Stern Cinema?
Yes.
It already had a star outside of the building.
Right.
And it had 6 of those. How do you call them in English?
Star. 6 points on the star, yes.
And Manfred Weisleder, the owner of the Star Club, used this sign for the Star Club too.
Yes.
And when the Star Club became popular, Stern magazine, they had the same star, didn't want him to use the star anymore. And so he forced him by law to change the star. And so he lost 1 of these points and had 5 left. That's the story.
Now, I've got a piece of memorabilia with me. I put on my Star Club pin that you can actually see there.
Yeah.
And I put this on because a lot of the beat groups from England would have this on, and this would protect them, wouldn't it, from the gangsters?
Yeah, that's half true.
Right.
Because people on Reeperbahn knew who was working at the Star Club. You didn't need this little sign.
Right.
And Star Club people looked very much after their employees because they needed the musicians. Even if it was their fault getting into a fight, they protected them.
Right. And there's a lot of musicians who would have cost substantial fees. Little Richard, the Everly Brothers.
Yeah, the most expensive artist ever appearing at the Star Club was Ray Charles.
And do you know what the fee for him was?
People say it was 60,000 D-marks, but I'm not sure, because I got a lot of stuff from the Star Club files, and the information I have is about 20,000 for just one night.
Yes.
So that's still a lot.
I interviewed Screaming Lord Sutch once, and he said, I shared the top billing at the Star Club with Ray Charles.
Yeah, and the story I know is that he said Ray Charles was his supporting act, because they changed acts at the Star Club, and so in a way it was true, because it was Ray Charles, and then it was Screaming Lord Sutch, and then it was Ray Charles again.
Right.
So
I wonder if Ray Charles saw it that way. Let's go through. Well, let's start here. We'll go around the walls, and these are more photographs by Astrid Kircher.
Yes, typical Hamburg photos, of course, taken about 500 meters from here at the Heiligengeistfeld, where the Hamburg Fun Fair used to be.
Yeah.
And these are...
And quite astonishing, really, because this was a group that was actually unknown, really, and they've got all these photographs that were taken before they were famous. Astrid was extraordinary from that point of view.
Yes, but it was especially because these guys were her friends, not famous rock and roll band.
Yes.
And she loved the looks of them.
But I bet you can't think of another big band, particularly from the 60s and 70s, who had so many photographs before they were known. It is just amazing.
I think that's the special thing on the Beatles, the magic.
Yeah.
Of course, Astrid was attracted by them and felt something.
Yes, and I noticed she tended to only take the good-looking singers, didn't she? She didn't have photo sessions with, say, a big bloke like KingSize Taylor or anything.
Yeah, I think you're right, but it was, they were friends, and so she took that.
Right, and we've got here, John Lennon signing something to Astrid.
Yeah, his book, and that's typical for John, Love and Cripples, from John. You see? And this is a nice little letter from George saying, Astrid, can you send your negatives to me? I'm going to write a book on the Beatles, because Paul and John are earning so much money now, and I don't write any songs. And so Astrid sent the negatives to him, and later when I became her manager, I asked her, where are your millions? And she said, there are no millions. And I said, where are your negatives? Gone. Where? I sent them to George. I said, call him. And 2 days later, George returned the negatives. And then we started working.
Well, people always say George was a really nice person, and that's an example of it, isn't it?
He really was.
Yeah. Right, and let's go to the next display case. It's just a couple of items in here. It looks like receipts for drinks.
In a way, yes. This is a gas receipt, because when the Beatles started playing the Star Club, Paul had rented, I think, a little Fiat car to drive around, and he bought some gas on the Star Club's account. And so he had to sign as well as James Paul McCartney, one of the first signatures. And this is a very nice little story, because they had in-house receipt books at the Star Club where employees, and the musicians were employees, had to sign for free drinks.
Right.
And to avoid confusion with colleagues by the same names, John and Paul had to sign with John Beatle and Paul Beatle, which makes this little book unique.
Right. Okay, and over here, some albums and such. Oh, a display of the great KingSize Taylor, devoted to KingSize Taylor. Fantastic.
And it's from KingSize Taylor's collection. So this shows how many real famous people played the Star Club, and KingSize all the time on the same bill, sometimes backing them.
Yes.
You know, in '64 he backed Chuck Berry on a whole tour of Europe. And this shows him with Ray Charles, Gene Vincent, everybody. And I have to say, I loved KingSize Taylor and Dominoes in the old days.
Yes.
Great band, and I still love them today.
Yes.
Great people.
Yeah. And
this is a little, I don't know the word for it, let me have a look. What it's called, I don't know. This little thing was presented to KingSize Taylor by Little Richard, and it says, "To my friend KingSize Taylor by Little Richard."
How nice. Now, New Year's Eve 1962, KingSize Taylor recorded the Beatles at the Star Club, and this became a cause célèbre, really, a very famous album. There were court cases galore over it, even been recent court cases as to whether it can appear on CD or not. And this is the tape recorder that it was recorded on.
Unfortunately not. It's the tape recorder. He played the tapes to Brian Epstein later, a different tape recorder, but he played the tape you were describing on this recorder to Brian, and he turned it down. Okay.
And this gives you an idea of the number of people who went to the Star Club, presumably, the famous Chinese lanterns there. So get about 2,000 in there, I think.
No, it was about 1,000. It's just a cinema.
Yes.
You see?
Right.
And it's display windows again. I always say nearly everybody played the Star Club except Elvis and the Rolling Stones.
Right.
It's so many famous people who played there. And it was a great time. I'm proud of having been a very small part of it.
Later on, at the Hep Stars, now, don't tell me, one of ABBA was in that group, wasn't it?
The piano.
Bjorn, the piano player, yes.
Even from Belgium, a skiffle band called Faire Grignal.
And Casey Jones and the Governors, I think Casey was Brown Casser, wasn't he?
That's right. And
of Cass and the Casanovas.
And not many people know that Eric Clapton played in his band for a couple of weeks.
Yes.
When I met Eric a couple of years ago, he asked me if Brian Casser's still around in Germany.
And Brian Casser, Cass and the Casanovas, he left the Liverpool band and they became the Big Three. And someone who is still singing today, Lee Curtis there, very impassioned version of Jezebel he does. A very, very good voice indeed.
Yeah, he was famous for it in Hamburg.
Right. And move over to this display here. A group that became very big in Germany, the Remo Four. Yeah,
the Remo Four. They were forerunners of jazz rock. So the audience, unfortunately, didn't like them very much because they were ahead of their time. But the musicians loved them. Great band.
Now here's Ginger Baker, and behind him there's a musician who clearly 2 weeks at the Star Club has got to him.
What's his name again?
I don't know.
With the cream.
Oh, Jack Bruce.
Yeah,
yes,
Bruce.
right.
And that's Eric. VIPs later to become Spooky Tooth.
Right, well, let's have a look now at what it was like in the Star Club. And we've got, behind you, Ulf, here, we've got the seats as in the Star Club.
Yeah, it's a couple of original bar stools and an original table from the Star Club.
Right, and in front of us here, you've got an idea of what the stage was like.
Yeah, I have to say that the real stage, of course, was much bigger. You have to imagine a real cinema stage. But this is just to give an impression of the backdrop, the famous Manhattan skyline backdrop. And in front of the backdrop...
And the famous gold piano. Actually, that's not the gold piano,
is it? The gold piano was bought for Ray Charles. because maybe they requested a piano like that. Anyway, this is in the center is Tony Sheridan, the uncrowned king of St. Pauli, music-wise, and the piano player is Chris Andrews, who later became a famous singer.
Right, Yesterday Man.
Yeah, and to bring myself in a bit, that's my original drum kit I used to play at the Star Club.
Right. And what band were you with at the Star Club?
A very, very famous band called William Thornton and the Chicago 8. Nobody remembers them. English singer and a German band backing him.
Yeah. And the keyboards?
Just a keyboard from the 60s to give people an impression what the bands used to use.
Okay, the Star Club there with the Manhattan skyline. Let's have a look at a few more bits of memorabilia about the Star Club in these wonderful display cases.
Yes, Spence, here we've got parts from the Star Club bookkeeping. First of all, it's a picture showing Manfred Weisleder, the owner of the Star Club.
Yeah, he doesn't look too threatening there, actually, but I think he was a fairly imposing figure, wasn't he?
Yes, and he was, I think he was a genius, because he invented a lot of things important for rock and roll music.
Right.
Merchandising was not known then, and he had a lot of merchandising things.
We've seen a lot of that Star Club memorabilia, certainly.
Yeah, we talk about that later.
Right.
And this, for example, is an advance payment to Fats Domino, and lots of other things. Original stamps, is it stamps?
Yes.
From the Star Club. And look over here, for example, a couple of hotel receipts. This is one for Little Richard at the Pram. This is one for Ray Charles at the Atlantic hotels. They had nice accommodation, not just bunk beds or so, but they were real stars, of course. This is a letter by Brian Epstein to Manfred Weisleder saying that the Beatles should have better accommodation next time.
Right.
And lots of things like that are in here.
And so we looked at these letters here, and I see there's a cup over there. That's a cup that was awarded by the Star Club, was it?
Yeah, because in the beginning they just had English bands, mainly from Liverpool and London at the Star Club, and a couple of American stars. But now they brought in the German acts, and they had talent contests for two reasons. Just first one was finding talent. And the second one was they all brought their following to the Star Club, and they had new customers to pay, you see. And the first talent contest was won by a band you might know as well, the Rattles.
Well, yes, they appeared in Liverpool a couple of times as well.
The only German band who played the Cavern.
And they really based themselves on the Beatles, didn't they?
Yeah,
100%.
So they were called the German Beatles.
Yes.
They had Beatles everywhere, in every country. They had the Hungarian Beatles or so. Here they had the German Beatles, the Rattles.
And so we've seen the cup, and now I see a display that makes me drool, because in the early 60s we didn't have singles with picture sleeves in England. They certainly had them in America, of course, and they had them obviously in Germany too. And here's a wonderful display of German picture sleeve singles, all presumably from the Star Club label.
Yeah, that's right. As I said before, Manfred Weisleder, from my point of view, was a genius, and he brought in merchandising into rock and roll. He had his own record label, he had his own magazine, he had everything, and these are the complete singles from his label.
Everything that the Star Club put out is here, all the singles. That's fantastic.
Yeah, and also the LPs, as we call them, the albums. I mean, there's one, and over there are a lot more. Yes, this is the complete Star Club label, single-wise.
And a lot of them are records that he actually recorded himself here in Hamburg, not just leasing from British labels or American labels.
Most of them were recorded here, but a couple of leasings as well. And also they exported Star Club recordings to England, for example. This is a early Decca EP, Teen Beat, the Rattles from Star Club Hamburg, English version. And they exported them to Japan, everywhere, South America.
Okay, well, let's have a look at the album sleeves after this.
Yeah.
here are the album sleeves from the Star Club label. Oh, I'd love to own half these albums. I've got a few things on CDs, but not too many of them. The Liverbirds, who really didn't mean anything in Liverpool as an act, but they were very, very popular at the Star Club.
Yeah, they lived in Germany. As Lee Curtis used to say, I buried myself in Germany. That's what happened to the Liverbirds as well.
And to KingSize Taylor, a lot of them stayed too long in Germany when the action was actually happening in England, wasn't it?
And this is just the tip of the iceberg. They had a lot more albums out then.
Yeah. I mean, the Remo 4 did a great version of Peter Gunn.
Yeah, and that album still is fantastic. Great album.
Yeah, and Ian and the Zodiacs, who were very, very popular too.
Good band. Good band as well.
Okay, and Jerry Marsden album here.
Yeah, and on the other side, it's Jerry's original Greg's Tennessean. He used to play on his early recordings.
Right, the Chet Atkins guitar, in fact, yes.
Right. Yeah. And a couple of merchandising things from the Star Club, magazines, of course, a little bag, T-shirt, as well, and postcards. They had everything at the Star Club.
And what about this money box?
That was for tips at the Star Club. So if somebody bought a drink and gave a tip to the barmaid, they put the tip into that. You couldn't buy it.
An English single here, the Red Parlophone single of Love Me Do, signed?
Yeah, signed. That's all from the fantastic, amazing collection of Uwe Blaschke from Minden, the so-called king of Minden, as I call him, because he's got everything. Look, there's a publicity card from the Star Club, signed, of course.
Now, that bears out what we were saying earlier. I mean, that clearly is the Beatles on the way back, and they look worn out, don't they?
I don't know when and where that photo was taken. I don't think it was in Hamburg.
Yeah.
But anyway, you're right.
You look at Paul McCartney. I mean, he looks as though he's been playing for far too long, really.
Oh, they really have.
He wanted a good night's sleep. Yes. Yeah, and we'll turn around and have a look at these posters on the
I was talking about Japan. Look, this is an advertisement from Japan for a tour of the Liverbirds in Japan, and this is
the wonderful Lee Curtis. Yeah. Still performing to this day, still doing Jezebel.
Yeah, the German band, the Screamers, typical German name. And look, some Star Club leaflets, but also one from the Cavern saying that the Rattles were performing there. And they played there indeed for 2 weeks. Only German band performing for 2 weeks at the Cavern.
Yeah.
And now, talking about the Rattles, the German Beatles, as you said, they even made a film. But the film was not comparable to the Beatles films. It was not that good. But anyway, they were really big in Germany and a good band.
Yeah. And is it still around now? Could you get that on DVD or anything?
Yes, and Achim, the guy over there, the lead singer then, he's still a big star in Germany. Right. Singing in German today.
And this is another poster for the Screamers that we've already seen. Yeah. Right, well that pretty well completes that slab of wall. Let's have a look at the next thing.
Let me mention one thing. You may not know that Manfred Weisleder not only invented merchandising for German rock and roll, but also franchising. He had up to 14 Star Clubs licensed around Germany.
This is in places like Cologne and the like, is it? Yes. And so some of the bands, like say Ian and the Zodiacs, will be playing Star Clubs in different cities.
Flensburg, everywhere. Right. So just to mention that, but now this is our top 10 club department.
Oh, the top 10 club now, right? Okay. And I recognise Howie Casey there.
Yeah, it's a bit mixed because the top 10 was before the Star Club, but now here we are.
Right.
That's Howie Casey. That's John Phillips, who used to play with the Eyes and before with the Roadrunners, an American guy. And that's a bit later already at the top 10, about 67 or so. Yeah. And here are...
there's a letter from Brian Epstein here.
Cancelling the job at the top 10 club because he preferred the Star Club then.
That is astonishing because Epstein was so much a man of his word that he says he's made the provisional arrangement for the Beatles to appear at the top 10 and he says, hard luck, we're going off to the Star Club.
Yeah, I think it's provable that he got 1,000 D-Mark extra from Weisleder as a special agreement. to bring the Beatles not to top 10 but to the start.
Even so, it's untypical behaviour by Epstein, I would say.
Yeah, yeah.
Because he honoured agreements that the Beatles had made before they became famous.
Oh, yeah.
So we moved from this letter of Brian Epstein's to this display of top 10 club memorabilia. I particularly like the look of this because I love to see how much people are getting paid.
Yeah. It's the Jets. Maybe already called the Beat Brothers then.
Yeah. So that's Tony Sheridan in the Jets, yeah. And Tony Sheridan being quite fair, everybody getting the same, or at least 4 of the musicians getting the same. One poor bloke at the bottom only getting 105. Oh, he's involved with the stage by the look of it.
Just 3 days.
Oh, just 3 days, right. And 245 Dutch marks a week, so that's about £25 for the week, which is probably more than these people's parents were earning at the time, I would think.
Tell you. It's not true that they didn't get any money playing Hamburg. They got a lot compared to other professions. Yeah, and it's a lot of photos showing the Beatles on stage sitting like a skiffle group, you see. Yeah. It was in '61. They still were developing in a real beat band.
Yeah, and they've got their leather trousers on there as well.
And may I take you to this cabinet now?
Yes, right.
After you, sir.
This is Polydor Records, yes?
Yeah. Right. So let's start here.
Okay.
This photo shows Bert Kaempfert. And this is the original, or one original copy of the contract he had with the Beatles.
Right. Now, Bert Kaempfert worked as a producer for Polydor.
Not really. He was freelance, and he leased the Beatles tapes too.
But he'd already had an American #1 with Wonderland by that night. So why was he bothering to do this?
Because he liked it. And he was a producer, and he thought Tony Sheridan and the Beatles, the combination from the top 10 club, would work out fine.
Right, so he went to the top 10 club to see the Beatles and signed them up, and this is the actual contract that they signed.
It is.
And one interesting thing about this contract, it's got the 4 Beatles signatures, but not Tony Sheridan, so that was a separate contract, was it? Tony Sheridan and the Beat Brothers.
Yeah.
Because we've got here the Beatles on stage with Tony Sheridan.
Yeah.
And George looking very carefully at Tony Sheridan, making sure, because Sheridan was very unpredictable, presumably, and he wanted to make sure he was playing the right notes.
Maybe.
Yes.
But this is a very, very special and important part of our show in the Hamburg Museum. It's the original CVs the Beatles wrote for Bert Kaempfert.
Oh, right. So this is 1961, the Beatles writing about themselves.
Yes.
And he's put John Lennon leader.
Yeah.
Yes.
And above ambition to be rich.
Yes.
Which was happening later.
So that's John Lennon's. This is Paul McCartney's handwriting. I'd know that anywhere.
Yes. Yeah. You're right.
Now this is intriguing because he says that he's composed about 70 songs with John Lennon. And John says he's written a couple of songs with Paul. Yeah. So who is telling the truth? Paul McCartney and now George Harrison. And George Harrison mentioning the fact that he was deported from Germany when he was 17 years old. So that's a strange thing to put in your CV, isn't it?
Yeah.
He clearly hadn't had much instruction about how to do CVs. Yes. And Pete Best there, confirming that he was born in Madras, India.
Yeah. And here is the star of the band, Tony Sheridan.
And certainly the best handwriting, isn't it? Beautifully written, that.
Oh yes, he's great at doing things like that.
And he gives his full name there. Anthony Esmond Sheridan McGinnity. Tony Sheridan. Yes, and he mentions all the tours that he'd been on with Conway Twitty and Gene Vincent and Eddie Cochran in the UK. Fantastic. I mean, he knows how to write a CV, and George Harrison doesn't. Okay, where to next?
So, Spencer, please follow me to the Beatles collector's paradise.
The King of Mints.
It's here.
Oh,
so
gosh, this is an Aladdin's cave of Beatles memorabilia, and all the collection of one man.
Yeah, it's just a very, very small part of his collection. He's got everything. So let's start here. This is one of my favorites because it has something to do with the early Hamburg days. This is an advertisement on New Musical Express for the Beatles singer Lady Madonna, later in the 60s.
Yes.
And saying, the new rock and roll combo direct from Hamburg.
Oh.
Which is great. So it says, oh yes, it was important to them as well.
Yeah.
So,
it's a nice sort of joke, that really, and a nice nod back to those times, isn't it?
And this is the tip of the iceberg of Uwe's collection. Kitsch from everywhere, mainly from Germany, I think, in this case. There are rings, there are little guitars, brooches.
Brooches.
Yeah. Sorry about that. Yeah. And I mustn't explain because you see what's here.
It's just amazing. And a lot of it in very good condition. You'd expect most of them to have been bought by young fans and to have been damaged.
That's the special thing on Uwe's collection. It's a German collection. Everything is very properly done and safe and so on. These are very, very, very important parts of the show because they are signatures from the early Hamburg days.
And there is the gold piano at the Star Club, played by Roy Young.
I have to disappoint you again, Spencer. This is a white piano.
Yes.
Roy got from Manfred Weisleder to draw him from the top 10 to the Star Club.
Oh, right.
A white piano and a white car and a white suit. Right. And the piano with Roy Young's name on it.
Oh, I see. Yes, I can see that.
Beatles had to sort of back him like they did for Tony Sheridan at the Top 10 Club.
Right. But there was a gold piano there, wasn't there?
Later for Ray Charles.
Right. Yeah.
This is a white one. I didn't know that, but Roy told me. Yeah. That's amazing. A white suit, white car, and a white piano.
Yeah. And let's have a look at the other cabinets over here. This shows the Beatles memorabilia. The advertising started very early on, didn't it? 63, 64. There were lots of items, pictures of them in 63, 64 on cups and things. Yeah.
And very special German things. Look at the Hamburg Fun Fair. They were selling these little hearts from, I don't know the word for the material. Cake, some cake. And they had these little pieces of paper in front of them saying, she loves you, sie liebt dich, using the Beatles' faces without permission, of course.
Yeah. Right, and let's have a look at this display cabinet here. They're often quite grotesque, aren't they? I mean, those four figures there in the black. But nevertheless, people bought these in great numbers.
Oh, yes.
And the Beatles guitars, I well remember them in England.
Yeah, guitars, stockings, everything.
And what about this? This is a postcard from George, Christmas card from George, really.
Yeah, real.
And bills that they're on. Oh, it's fantastic. You could spend the whole day just in this section, couldn't you? Every item tells a story.
Yes, I wish Uwe was here. He could explain everything.
Right. Well, it certainly took my breath away, that, Ulf, but some of it was unbelievable tat. I can't believe that they licensed it.
Look at this. It's the real thing.
Oh, the real thing.
Yeah, it's two postcards Ringo wrote to his grandma.
So these are cards from Ringo Starr to his grandmother. He signs them, is that Ricky or Richie? Richie, I see, yes, Richard Starkey, I see. And his English not too good, is it? Not too bad, T.O., and the people here are okay, H-E-A-R, so it shows he missed out on a few things at school. Yeah. But he played at in the German clubs with Rory Storm and the Hurricanes, the Beatles, and he also did a stint for a few months with Tony Sheridan.
3 months at the top 10 with Tony.
Okay. And where do we go next?
I like to show you a couple of very, very nice guitars from the 60s, all the same color, candy apple red, and they are in here.
Right.
Oh. So look, Spencer, all these beautiful guitars.
Fender World over there, certainly, yes. Oh, Fender here too, yes.
Yeah.
Oh,
all
they've
the
had
same color. And I think it's 18 guitars in here in total, and they cost €1 million in total.
And why are they here?
They're here because they're beautiful guitars from from those days. They were not played by special people or so, but they're in a wonderful shape, and everybody who's into collecting guitars would go like this. See?
So none of them have Beatle association
No,
specifically?
No.
But Fender Strat, which was played by Buddy Holly, for example.
Look here, Flying V.
Oh, very, yes,
thing
indeed,
now.
yes.
Yeah.
These are all Gibsons over here, yes.
All Gibsons, very, very beautiful guitars. The guitar collector's dream.
Well, all good things must come to an end, and we're coming towards the end of the exhibition, I think.
Yes, and the end of the 60s, psychedelia, discotheques, and so on. If you'd like to follow me again.
Okay.
So, Spencer, here we are right at the back room of the Star Club, the dressing room, backstage. Yeah. It's Chuck Berry, Screaming Lord Sutch, a young German band. Over there it's Achim Reichel of the Rattles and Domingo Zamudio of Sam the Sham and the Pharaohs.
Indeed, he recently played Liverpool. Wonderful guy, yes. Yeah, great guy. And we haven't mentioned Jimi Hendrix, one of the most famous people to play the Star Club.
67 at the Star Club, and times changed by the end of the 60s a lot. Psychedelia, fashion change, look, Twiggy here. They had musicals.
Hair, yes. Well, hair would be very mild compared to what was going on in the rest of the Reeperbahn area, though, wouldn't it?
Yes, right. Yeah. And look at that poster, Jimi Hendrix, very psychedelic, isn't it?
Yep.
And
playing in Stuttgart.
Unfortunately, discotheques took over, rock and roll went down, and
so Manfred Weisslieder got all these Star Clubs, and they just disappeared, did they?
They did. The original Star Club closed its doors New Year's Eve '69, and here we are, the last puff from the ruins of the Star Club.
And the 5 stars that we were talking about, the 5 points of the star.
The original star, it's part of the original stage, and it's part of the original dance floor.
Right. And why was this preserved? Do you know? How does it come to be here?
A friend of mine, who was the resident photographer of the Star Club, Günther Sind, he saved a lot of stuff from the ruins of the Star Club when the building had burned down and it was demolished. So later I bought a lot of stuff from him, and that's where the pieces of the dance floor come from, and the stage parts. The star was saved by somebody who runs a recording studio in his cellar in St. Pauli, and he gave it to us for the show.
Yeah, I'm going to be a ridiculous fan now, but if I touch this here, I am actually touching something that John Lennon could have stood on.
Could have. I'm not sure if this is the original stage from the very first days, but from the ruins of the Star Club. Maybe it was renewed or something.
Okay, and we've got some quite big exhibits around here.
Yeah, this is the disco part.
So, the famous disco ball, yes, and we're in the late 60s here.
Yeah, very important part of the late 60s was the sexual revolution, of course.
Yeah.
This is a couple of things reminding us the anti-baby...
the pill, yes.
Yeah. And magazines.
I mean, the pill changed everything, really.
Yeah,
and, yes.
It did.
And magazines of that period, yes.
Yeah. And as a little break, may I take you to the toilet?
Oh, no. We've already had one toilet joke in this DVD. You won't know that, but...
No. But look, it's posters of Russ Meyer films and so on. And
an early contraceptive machine.
Yeah.
Okay, Ulf, well, I've had enough of that, so let's see what else there is.
Yeah, remember the landing on the moon?
Indeed, yes.
A couple of papers reminding us of that, and a picture up there.
Yeah.
See?
Well, that picture of Khrushchev that we saw earlier on was with Yuri Gagarin, wasn't it?
Yeah,
yes.
And this is an American astronaut, of course.
Yeah.
Flower power. And we leave the show through a Yeah, unfortunately, the last one. You remember we entered the exhibition through a living room of our parents, early 60s.
Yeah.
Now we are leaving it through a room where the young people used to live in. Famous German soccer player Uwe Seeler on the wall, Che Guevara, and the famous Frank Zappa poster.
A very controversial one of him sitting on the toilet, yes.
Yes, times have changed a lot. Look at this little...
Sort of thing Jimi Hendrix might have worn, yeah.
And record players have changed. There's a T-shirt from the Fehmarn Festival where Jimi Hendrix used to play his last gig. And look on the table, something not from the 60s, but a great book we put together.
This is fantastic.
Yeah, the Hamburg sound, and a little surprise on page 40. Let me find it for you. Where is it? 40.
I know what you're going to say too, but I haven't seen this.
Yeah, I know that. The Liverpool sound or the Hamburg sound by a certain Spencer Lee. What do you think
Right.
about
I knew I'd written a piece for this, of course, but I haven't seen it. And someone's translated it into German as well. Thank you very much indeed for this, Ulf. That's very kind of you.
Can we show to the camera again?
Yes.
Because it's a beautiful book.
and this is available long after the exhibition's finished, of course. Yeah. Well, Ulf, thank you very, very much for showing us around the Hamburg Sound exhibition at the Museum of Hamburg Life. I've noticed that Ulva is around, who's got all this memorabilia, not collecting memorabilia today. So I'd like to have a few words with him before we go to the next phase. But I think what we're actually going to do next is to go onto the St. Pauli streets again, go down the Reeperbahn, go down the Große Freiheit, and actually see what's happened to these clubs today. What's actually there? They've been celebrated here. What's the reality now? What do fans see as they go down the Reeperbahn? If that's okay with you?
Oh, yes.
Thank you.
Sure.
Well, we've been around the museum now, but before we go, we're going to talk to Uwe Braske, who is a graphic designer, and it was he who had many of these items that we've actually seen today, some extraordinary items. Uwe, you've built up an amazing collection over the years. When did you start collecting?
Collecting in I was 12 or 13 years old in the early 60s, to collecting more football cards. And no Beatles. Rolling Stones was more interested. Beatles was a good reason to contact with the girls. And then I go to schools, and at the morning I saw pictures, a card box, collecting for gum cards from A, B, and C, chewing gum cards. And I saw 4 lads and with autographs, and very interesting autographs. I collected football autographs, German artist autographs, and then that was my first memorabilia now.
And what is your favourite piece of memorabilia that you've got, your most valued piece?
Yeah, the best, what I have to see here in the museum now is the first record contract with Bad Camford to recording My Bonnie.
Yeah. And how do you think of My Bonnie as a record? Is it one of your favourites?
Songs or
well, just that particular record. How do people in Hamburg feel about that record?
I think Hamburg is 2 million people live there, and I think Beatles Star Club. Star Club is very interesting for the people there, and remember more Star Club connecting with Beatles.
Yeah, I mean, I actually love My Bonnie because I think it's got a lot of rock and roll excitement in it. And even though it's a fairly silly song now, they come across very, very lively in it, and it just shows you how exciting Tony Sheridan and the Beatles in this instance must have been on stage.
Then in the school, we're learning My Bonnie, German words. My Bonnie is over the oceans was a tradition song, and then came to a rock and roll song. My Bonnie, we learned.
And you've got a contract there of Tony Sheridan with the Jets. So he came over as part of a group called the Jets initially.
With different artists in the 2 Eyes Club in Soho. And I give, and not in the same time I live there here. Then Bruno Koschmieder wouldn't like to opening bring rock and roll to Hamburg, and met Ian Hines to Ice Club. Bring 5 people to Germany, with Rick Hardy, Jimmy Ward, Crawley, called Melenda, different names, to work here in Hamburg. And the last one was Tony Sheridan, and came in the early 60, before the Beatles came to Hamburg.
Yeah.
The Beatles came in August 17 to Hamburg. Yeah. And I think for myself, this is a first invasion for British groups.
Now, on that contract, would you say, it's in Dutch marks, would you say that they were being paid well?
The contract from Camford?
Yes. Well, no, the contract for the Jets, Tony Sheridan and the Jets.
I don't know.
Oh,
I don't know. Yeah. I'm a collector, not investment, not seeing dollars in the eyes.
Right. And this exhibition is called the Hamburg Sound. Yeah. I mean, most people think of it as the Liverpool sound, but do you think the Beatles owe it all to Hamburg?
I think it is a mixed. I think the Beatles came to Hamburg and learning, 8 hours one day, learning, come back to Liverpool, and what you play? And I think the Hamburg Throat, when 8 hours one day working is very hard, I think, so with a little bit drunk and breakups, and then the sound is different to before. It's the Hamburg sound. Yeah. Also KingSize Taylor, not for the KingSize.
Yeah. And finally, that contract you got with Bert Camford for the Beatles, how did you get hold of it?
I got it for, I think, 5, 6, 7 years ago.
Yeah. Just at an auction, was it?
I got a call.
Wow.
This contract is on the market. And the man wouldn't like to get to Sotheby's Christie's, but I think this contract must be there in Germany forever. Yeah. Better by me,
and
my collection.
And you've no intention of selling it?
No, I buy it, but at a good price. Now is don't know the price.
Great. Well, it's been great seeing you, so thanks very much indeed. Oh, hi all. Good to see you again. Yeah. And that was a lovely little interview with Uwe there.
Yeah, he's a great guy, isn't he?
He is, definitely. And we're in St. Pauli, not too far from the Reeperbahn, are we?
Yeah, it's about 400-500 meters from here.
Okay, well, let's go.
Okay.
We're on the other side of the road now because Ulf wants us to come over on this side of the road to show us something. So, Ulf?
Yeah, by the way, this is the St. Pauli Theater, and the granddad of the nowadays owner promoted the Beatles Bravo Blitz tourney in '66. And now here we are. It's Germany's most popular or well-known police station, the Davidwache.
How can a police station be well known?
Because it's right in the center of St. Pauli, and they shot a lot of scenes for major movies inside here, chasing gangsters around St. Pauli and things like that.
Oh, this is amazing. So this is a working police station that on occasion has itself out so that filmmakers can film in there.
Maybe not today anymore, but in the 60s very often. And the most important thing for Beatle fans, Paul and Pete have been arrested here for one night before being deported to England after their Kaiserkeller stint.
This is when they burnt a condom in the Bambi, wasn't it, which is where they were staying.
Yeah,
and Bruno Koschmider didn't like that.
That's it.
Yeah. And we've never really got to the truth of this story, have we?
No, but as the legend says, they did it and they've been arrested here, as a matter of fact.
Yep. So Paul McCartney and Pete Best spent a night in the cells here.
Yep.
So we've seen the police station now. Where do we go to next?
To the Top 10 Club. On
Top 10,
yeah.
On the other side of the street.
Yep. But being in Germany, we are careful. It's red light on.
Yeah.
You don't cross.
Nobody jaywalks in Germany at all. Is there a law about it?
It's changing, but people in Germany, maybe it's from the old days of Kaiser Wilhelm, are obeying the government very, very much and obey the law.
So if it says stop, you stop. You don't run across.
Yeah.
Oh, well, yes, that gentleman, yes. He was taking a chance, actually. We're going up towards the top 10 club now, Ulf.
Yes, that's right. But I'm afraid it's not very similar to the old days. Nowadays, I even don't know what's in it because the owners and the views of the clubs on Reeperbahn are changing very, very quickly. So let's have a look. Oh, it's called Discotheque La Rocca now.
Ah, right. Well, this looks quite swish. It's a very nice sign outside. We'll see what it is when we get there. Oh, desolate.
And look up there. It still says Hippodrome. They had the display window here in the old days, covering this Hippodrome and cafe thing. This is very old because in this place was a hippodrome, a place where donkeys and horses run around in circles and people could try to stay sitting on them, right?
Now, the first time Alan Williams went to Hamburg, he went on something like that, so this would have been here before it was the top 10 club.
They had several hippodromes here, but this was one. And so this says Hippodrome, and there was the display window showing the photos of the bands who played in this place. Yeah, it's a shame, it changed a lot.
Now, how did the top 10 club come into being?
As I said, it was a hippodrome before, and it was bombed in World War II and destroyed partly. So hippodrome was not a real business idea anymore because people looked for other thrills. And when rock and roll was going down well on Große Freiheit, first at the Kaiserkeller, the son of the hippodrome's owner realized, oh, that's a good idea having a rock and roll club.
And he was quite young, was he?
Yeah, he was about 21 or so. And together with Tony Sheridan and the Jets and Horst Fascher, they rebuilt or redecorated the hippodrome and turned it into a rock and roll club in 1900 and by the end of 1960.
Yeah. So this was Peter Eckhorn that you're talking about?
Definitely, yeah.
So the top 10 club opened, as you say, the end of 1960, the beginning of 1961 by Peter Eckhorn. Already you had the rock and roll on the Reeperbahn at the Indra and the Kaiserkeller, which was owned by Bruno Koschmieder, who in fact was something of a gangster. So how did Peter Eckhorn have the nerve at 21 years old to start his own club here?
I think people working and living on Reeperbahn, or St. Pauli as you say, they were all very tough people and they tried their best to be successful and didn't discuss things like that very long with people who did the same. So I don't know, but they all had a circle of people around them protecting them, and that was normal, I think.
Yeah. And this place could seat how many, would you say?
It was much smaller than the Star Club. Let me say 400 or so.
Yeah. And the Beatles played here quite a long stint in 1961.
Yes, I think it's the longest stint they ever played in their whole career, the stint at the top 10.
And it was through this gate that Bert Camford went and signed up the Beatles for Polydor.
Yes.
Okay, well I don't think there's anything to see here really. It's a great shame. So we'll continue walking down the Reeperbahn. I mean, you do see dildos and things on open display in the window, which you'd never see in Liverpool, for example.
I have to admit, I haven't seen things like that in Liverpool, but I think it's a thing you can see everywhere in the world now. It's nothing very special anymore. But in the old days it was, but they didn't show any dildos in the displays then. No. So it was different.
Now, I noticed one this side of the road, and we're going into the Große Freiheit, and the Herbertstrasse is just off one of the roads on the other side.
Yes, very close to the Davidwache.
Yeah. Very close to the police station, is that you're saying? Or, no, it is close to the police station.
Yeah, it is.
And this is a street where prostitution is legally allowed. The women are in the windows, but we'd be taking our life in our own hands if we tried to film there, would we?
Yes, but I think that's quite understandable.
Yes.
Because people working in that field are not keen to be filmed.
And certainly not their clients.
That's right. So look, there's a sign saying the Beatles Platz.
Yes. Right. The Beatles Platz. Now this is something you're behind, isn't it? The organisation that's putting together this Beatles Memorial in Hamburg.
Putting that together. And this is exactly the place where it will be in the future. The junction of Große Freiheit into Reeperbahn.
And at the moment there isn't really anything about the Reeperbahn that we've been down that says Beatles. So that will be very good to have that there.
Oh yes, and that will be a start for a whole bigger thing. You see, we've put the show at the museum on as a start. Then this will be the next step, and then we'll organize nice plates at every building, and so a bit modeled after Liverpool.
And the website you've got www.oldie95.d. Why Oldie95?
They are a radio station,
Yes.
and they. I don't know the word in English. They started the whole thing, so they are responsible.
And how soon do you think this will happen?
Next year.
Oh, great. Okay, well, I can see the sign for the Große Freiheit here, so off we go. And so what's our first location going to be, Ulf?
It's the so-called beer shop, Gretel and Alphonse, where the musicians of the Star Club used to sit in their breaks between sets, playing cards, having a few. Unfortunately, it's closed, but this pub is still the same. Low prices for people working on Reeperbahn.
So this is one of the few places that's actually retained its name through the 40 or so years.
Yeah.
And do they have much memorabilia on the wall or anything?
Not really, not really. I remember a couple of years ago, 20 years ago or so, Paul was having a press conference down at the Kaiserkeller, and he came here and was reminded that he owed them some money, about 20 marks or so. And so he signed them a poster and gave it to them. It's still on the wall.
Yeah. Okay, well let's move on to one of the clubs.
Yes, we will. Next,
And I know
I'm going to show you the Star Club, or what's left of it.
Well, you said it was only a few doors away from Gretel and Alphonse.
Yes.
Right.
And it's over there, look, the yellow Holsten sign.
Yes.
That's where the original Star Club Star advertising the club was hanging in the old days. And where there's this Thai live music sign, they had a big yellow sign with all the names of the bands that performed.
Yeah, and a very impressive list of names as well. A lot of American stars too. And there's a rock cafe there now.
Yes, but of course it has nothing to do with the original Star.
In fact, there are several different businesses in the area where the Star Club was, in that space.
Yes, it's because of the building burned down and it was demolished, and it's a totally different thing now.
So there's nothing original to see here at all?
No. But
Okay, so let's cross the road now and see what's actually in the Star Club building these days.
look, on these walls, here and here, they had the display windows I showed to you at the museum.
Yes.
We reconstructed. And now, look, something that's reminding us of the old days. A plaque, but not showing the Beatles, but Jimi Hendrix.
And why Jimi Hendrix? I know he played at the Star Club, but he only did a night or two, didn't he? And
That's right.
the Beatles did hundreds. Well, not hundreds, but getting on for that.
Yeah. I think the guy who put this plaque on the wall was a Jimi Hendrix fan. That's the answer.
Yeah. And these steps aren't a dance that they were doing at the Star Club.
In a way, yes, but in reality, they're showing us the direction to the, let me call it, tombstone in the backyard.
Okay, let's go and see the tombstone. Just a few steps past Paradise.
Yep.
No, you haven't lost
Now
me to that.
turn
I'm
left,
still here.
Please.
Yep, and here it is. the
Yeah,
tombstone.
here it is, a really big one. Mentioning a lot of bands that played here. I think Jimi Hendrix, unfortunately, is
Yes,
spelled a bit wrong,
Yes.
and The Who didn't play here.
Oh dear. Right. Right. And who erected this? Was it a bunch of fans putting the money up?
Yeah, which is nice because nobody else did something or anything.
And so it was open for 7.5 years, really. Yeah.
And I have to say, from my point of view, it was the most important club of those days.
And
Because the list of people who played there, as I said in the museum, except Elvis and the Rolling Stones, it was nearly everybody.
and can you explain the final sentence? If you read that out to us in English.
Yes, that means we thank the following persons: Manfred Weisleder and his team, Horst, which means Horst Fascher, Pico, who was a factotum at the Star Club, Hans, who was working at the Star Club, and all the others who made this possible.
Yeah. Now I know Weisleder. I know Weiss means actually white in German, but these people like Manfred Weisleder, Bruno Koschmider, Horst Fascher, they're fabulous names. You're scared before you even meet them.
If you're from abroad, maybe
Yes.
it's quite normal German names. You see, so Weisleder translated means white leather,
Yes.
which is normal, and Fascher and Koschmider is normal.
They've certainly
Maybe
got,
not to your
They've got a
ears.
sinister ring about them, certainly. So it's really nice, isn't it, Ulf, that the fans got together and
I
put the money for
appreciate
this.
very, very much they did it because nobody else did. It's fantastic. It cost them a fortune.
Yeah. And in 2002, there's this little plaque that was put next to it by people from Liverpool.
Yeah, I appreciate that very much as well because there's always been a strong axis between Liverpool and Hamburg in the old days and still today. You see, Lee Curtis is performing a lot here, and KingSize Taylor has moved to Hamburg again, so it's still living.
Yeah, and they were remembering 40 years of the Star Club, even though it had long gone.
Yeah,
Okay.
it's been the most important time in their lives.
Well, it's a shame there's not much more to see of the Star Club, but let's be on our way.
So Spencer, we're crossing the street again,
Right.
approaching Kaiserkeller over there.
Which almost opposite the Star Club here.
Yeah, this is number 36 and the Star Club was 39.
Right.
And look, they're having a big former dance hall here in the background. It's called Große Freiheit 36.
Yes.
And it's still a lot of rock and roll going down Reeperbahn and Große Freiheit. We can have a look at the top sign saying who played here.
So all the groups that are mentioned on the sign above played the Kaiserkeller.
No, they didn't, Spencer. They played the big hall here and not the Kaiserkeller.
So the Kaiserkeller was just in the basement. That's right. And around 1960, when it opened, they had some local bands on, and Alan Williams came here, didn't he, on a day trip or what have you, and he saw Bruno Koschmider, who owned the place.
It's various stories behind that, but
Well, let's say it's Alan Williams' story.
but it's there were no German bands on. It was just the jukebox and some talent contests for solo singers.
Right.
And I think it was one rock and roll star performing there, German rock and roll star, Ted Herold. We saw him or his guitar in the museum.
Right.
And then the first band playing there in 1960 was the Jets from the Two Eyes Coffee Bar in London.
And this is because Bruno Koschmider had been told by Alan Williams that there was a good, vibrant rock and roll scene, he said, in Liverpool, and he should have some of those Liverpool bands playing here in Hamburg. He comes over to London, goes to the Two Eyes, signs up Tony Sheridan and the Jets, is that right? And they play here. And then that leads in turn to the Liverpool bands playing.
Yes, as long as we cling to Alan Williams' story, it's like that.
Yes.
You see, the first Liverpudlian band playing there was Derry and the Seniors. Koschmider again found at the Two Eyes, not Liverpool. And then the Liverpool connection started with Derry and the Seniors. Then it was Rory Storm and the Hurricanes, with Ringo on drums and so on. And that was downstairs here.
And in the Kaiserkeller, I think, although it will have gone now, the seating was a little unusual, wasn't it? Rowing boats?
Yes, it was rowing boats cut into half.
Oh, yeah. And this was because I do it. It'd be a lot of sailors, wouldn't it, coming into the port and going to the entertainment there?
Yeah, something like that. It's very close to the harbour, so that's the reason, I think.
Okay, and I noticed there's a sign on the door that actually refers to the Beatles playing at the Kaiserkeller.
Yeah, that's not right again, but some goodwill behind it.
Oh,
listen.
This is we'll wait for it to stop.
You're familiar with that melody, aren't you?
Yeah. Yeah. At 4 o'clock, and all the Liverpool bands would have been very familiar with that sound, wouldn't they?
Yes.
Because this is a church that was actually there in the midst of all this mayhem, in the Große Freiheit, a Catholic church that was there. Chris Curtis of the Searchers, I know, would come out of the Star Club early on a Saturday night, Sunday morning, and would actually go in there for the first service.
Yes, that's what Astrid told me, because she remembers Chris going there.
Yeah. And Mary Dostal of the Liverbirds actually wanted to be a nun, so she was always telling her mother about the church here rather than what was happening in the clubs. And so it's wonderful. I mean, that is intact and looks great. So we've seen the Kaiserkeller, the Top 10, the Star Club. So the Indra's left.
Yes, that's right.
So I can see the sign for the Indra there.
Yes.
Rhythm and Blues and Jazz Club, it says.
Yeah, and there's another sign. Look, here it is. And it's saying Indra. On the 17th of August 1960, the Beatles jumped on the stage of the Indra. It was their first stint in Germany and the beginning of a big career.
Yeah. So in many ways, this was the first time that the Beatles had played together as a group. They got Pete Best as a drummer. So there was John Lennon, George Harrison, Paul McCartney, Stuart Sutcliffe and Pete Best, the 5 of them.
Exactly.
They were hardly doing gigs in Liverpool. They'd done a few at the Grosvenor Ballroom and such, very, very little. They came here and this transformed them and made them into an absolutely top band, wasn't it?
Yeah.
This, in a way, is where the sort of beat was born, as it were. At Bruno Koschmider's club at the Indra, playing those long hours, playing several hours a night and really getting to grips with things so that when other bands saw them, they were just amazed at what they saw. Derry and the Seniors were playing at the Kaiserkeller. They said to Bruno Koschmider, don't invite that bum group, the Beatles, that's a terrible idea. And it wasn't, it was a really good idea.
Yeah, and later, of course, those guys changed their minds.
Yes, oh indeed, and unfortunately the Beatles didn't play here for too long because the residents actually complained about the noise, didn't they? And it went back to being a strip club,
Yeah, something like that.
Hilarious.
And then they went down to the Kaiserkeller.
Yeah, and they went to the Kaiserkeller, played with Rory Storm and the Hurricanes and demolished the stage one night because they weren't happy with it.
So we are told, and I think it could be true because these stages were not real stages, just some crates or something put together with something improvised.
But it actually shows the Mersey beat that they were really stomping on the stage to break it. And of course Rory Storm was sacked for that incident.
Was he?
Yes, he was, yes. And I mean, he came back to Hamburg, of course, and played many times later on. Now, the Beatles played at the Indra and the Kaiserkeller for Bruno Koschmider, and the place they stayed at is almost as famous or as notorious, isn't it? Is that close to here as well?
It's very close. It's the Bambi Kino. It's over there. And if you like to follow me.
Right.
So Spencer, the next door left is the back door of the former Bambi Kino.
Yes.
Look, this is that's all. And behind it is the concrete wall where the condom used to hang before it was lit by the Beatles, as the stories tell us.
Yes. And so the Beatles would come out of this back door here.
Yeah,
This
to
would
work.
being a Kino. That meant it was a cinema. It was a working cinema there.
But this was the back door, of course.
Yeah. So they slept, as it were, behind the screen or something, did they? And then they would come out to play at the Indra and then go back here again.
yeah.
So
No windows, just one bulb.
yeah. So these were not
Paintings,
salubrious surroundings. They were much better off when they were with Manfred Weisslieder at the Star Club.
yeah,
They had
much
better conditions. Yeah. And so they'd be pretty frustrated here anyway with these conditions.
I think so, yes.
Right. And this is the back door, but let's have a look at the front and let's see what there is of this Bambi Kino anyway. And here's the doorway, the front doorway of the Bambi Kino.
Yes, it is. And look, Spence, little plaque, not very impressive, showing the Beatles. And the photo shows them holding Preludin,
Yes.
speed tablets. Of
It looks like they've had a few too. Yes, definitely. Right. Yes, I mean, all the Beatle books talk about Bob Dylan introducing the Beatles to drugs. But I mean, it's nonsense really, because they were taking speed here, weren't they?
Yeah,
and
they
Preludin.
didn't really know it was drugs in that
Ah.
meaning, because they could buy them at the drugstore.
So it could be bought legally here, so it wasn't quite the same thing.
Legally, with a recipe. Yeah.
Yeah,
And
and-
everybody sold them on.
And they could keep you going all night.
Yes.
And Bruno Koschmider, he was one of these people who would shout this famous phrase, wasn't he? Max Show, when they appeared. And what does Max Show actually mean?
Put some show on. Action.
Yeah. So he didn't want them standing there like dummies. They had to leap around on the stage.
And he was right.
Yeah.
He was totally right. But that, of course, was a lot of work, 7 hours a night or so. So they needed this stuff. They didn't do it just for fun. You see?
Right. Well, we've seen the 4 clubs. I know that John Lennon was photographed for the rock and roll cover. Was that around here? Okay. Is it possible for us to see it now?
Oh yeah. By the way, the photo was taken by one of the EXI group of Hamburg. His name is Jürgen Former. And
Okay.
the doorway is around the corner.
Okay.
So look, this says Jägerpassage. That's the name of the place. And look, this is house number 1. No number anymore because people stole it, I think. And this is where John was photographed by Jürgen Wormer.
The famous pose in the doorway was here for rock and roll. And amazing. And they'd no idea it was going to be so iconic.
No, of
Yeah,
course not.
yeah. And now you've got in Matthew Street the same pose recreated, but they've got John Lennon's leather jacket and they put a 1963 head on him.
Yes, fantastic, isn't it?
Yes. No sense of history. So John Lennon stood here, and let's go back out onto one of the main streets again. Ulf, well, I'd like to thank you so much for showing us around the Reeperbahn, the Große Freiheit. That's been tremendous, wonderful. Expert on this subject, obviously, and we'd certainly like to see your shop if that's all right. We'll come to that a little later on.
Yes, if I'm not there, Susanna will show you around.
Yeah, well, I know that you're busy at the moment because you're
Really?
a top German songwriter and you're hopefully going to write another hit or two. And I hope today's given you a bit of inspiration for that.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
Good. Well, we're off to see another friend of yours now. We're off to see Gibson Kemp of KingSize Taylor and the Dominoes. He was a drummer with the band. He now has his own restaurant, which is called Kemp's. So you're going home for a little while. We may see you later on at the shop, and we're going to see Gibson.
Yeah, all
Okay.
the very, very best. Thank you very much. Have a safe flight home.
Okay, cheers.
If we
Well,
don't see
if we
each
don't
other.
see it. Okay, cheers all. Thanks very much. Okay, so we're now in Gibson Kemp's pub. It's called Kemp's English Pub, and Gibson is here with me before he prepares the meals. And Gibson, last time I saw you, you had an English pub in England. So what's made you come out here?
Well, a number of things. We moved to the country. Big mistake. So it was either spend the rest of our savings over in Wiltshire, where the pub was, or see where we could do it better. Both our kids happened to be in Germany at the time, and we took the decision to go out because we knew this place was available, and here we are.
Yeah. So it's a
It was
special.
a bit of a spur of the moment thing, yeah. Because our contract, our lease, our whatever it was called, was coming to an end in the UK, and we had to renegotiate. So it's a lovely place, but you know, all that village life and backbite. It was a bit like the Archers on speed.
Yeah.
If you know what I mean.
And this is a very English pub because you put your memorabilia up here,
That's
haven't
right.
you?
Yeah, but it's
from your
mostly
days
music
at-
memorabilia from. So that's our theme. We've got a nice red sort of royal colour pictures of the Queen, which the consulate, which closed last month, kindly donated to us. We've got the Anagoni, I think it's called, and got another one on the wall back there, which you'll see later, which has got the crown on and all that.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's very English. And we've got the British Club of Hamburg meet here. And funnily enough, the Friday before that, we've got what they call the Dino Club. And the Dino Club is, for want of a better word, all old waiters and bouncers and stuff from the waiters and bouncers and stuff from the Star Club. And I think I mentioned
All big steak eaters, I would think.
No, they're all exchanged like postcards and have you got this Star Club record and have you I heard so and so and there's even a website with all the dates of anyone who's over 60, old farts website sort of thing. It's great. It's really good.
And I mean, I know you're one of the younger Merseybeat musicians. How old were you when you first came over to Germany, and which band was it with?
It was with KingSize Taylor. I left Rory Storm to join KingSize because of the lure of Hamburg, basically, and the chance to get out of Liverpool, because there wasn't that many opportunities. When I think I was 17, just 17 when I sounds like a record, and when I got out of the managed to escape, and it was straight to Hamburg.
And did your parents mind you going?
No, KingSize went shorty. My dad came down to Bow Street Magistrates Court and said he agreed with everything. Manfred Weisslieder from the Star Club put 1,000 marks or pounds, I can't remember which, as some sort of guarantee, surety. And I, of course, agreed to be tucked up in bed by 10. It used to be 4:10 in the morning, not 10 at night.
Well, there was a curfew at the Star Club, wasn't there? For
There's a
young
curfew generally for young people.
Yeah.
Technically,
But you ignored
still is.
that?
Yeah, of course. But I had a ladder at the back of the stage into a false roof where I could escape. It only happened twice in 2.5 years or something, where I actually physically had to scoot up there and someone had jump on and start banging and pretending to be the drummer. So when they did a razzia,
And what was it like playing at the Star Club? It was quite a big place, wasn't it?
It was big. It was unbelievable. It was so exciting. Well, especially when you're 17 and you hadn't been anywhere else except North Wales for a week in a caravan next to the railway line. But that was sorry about the Welsh bit. That wasn't racist, by the way. and it was just great. It was you just can't describe it. The electricity, the musicality of it all, the just finding something new every day, and of course the sex was all that learning curve, which obviously you weren't going to get in a back road in Litherland, seemed to all take place within 300 yards of the Grosse Freiheit.
Although I'd heard you came over here with your school jacket, didn't you?
That's right. It was the Waterloo Grammar School. And because it was the only jacket I had that looked sort of, because my mum said, you've got to look posh, you're going on a plane for the first time. so she took the badge off, and there I was with a nice dark sort of stained jacket with a bright sort of badge-shaped bit of me grey cavalry twills or wherever they were, and then turned up 4 o'clock in the afternoon on March the 23rd, 1963.
And KingSize Taylor and the Dominoes, that was a really good cooking band, wasn't it? Good musicians.
Still is.
Yeah.
We're playing in Hamburg on December the 9th again. We'd just done something in Berlin, which went down a storm. It was great. It's like you wind all these old farts up, and then there we go.
Yeah.
You know.
And how predictable or unpredictable was KingSize on stage?
I haven't got my lawyer here, so no, he was very predictable. It was when Sheridan sort of shoved us all aside and tried to join in, that was the unpredictable factor. But it was all predictable because we were so well honed, well rehearsed, whatever the right word is. You know big words, you can tell us. Right? Yeah.
But there was a lovely picture we saw in the Museum of Hamburg Life, where George Harrison is clearly looking at Tony Sheridan on stage and watching him very carefully because he's not sure what he's going to do next, and that's the way Sheridan was.
Well, yeah, but there's a bit of a what's the right word? There's a bit of a legend attached to the Sheridan who played with Eddie Cochran. The short version is Eddie Cochran showed him, instead of the skiffly thing that we all, all bands used to play skiffly type stuff, Cochran showed him that typical rock sort of 8/4 sort of thing, and he then subsequently showed John, and John tended more to play the skiffly thing if you really look at it and think about it, but George actually mastered this and I think that was probably one of the best things he ever did.
Yeah. So Sheridan, a wild man in a wild town. This was a perfect place for him, the perfect place to see him. Really.
Absolutely. But it was all a bit mad. But it was nice mad. There wasn't anything evil about the whole thing. There wasn't any sort of okay. If you met a London band, you'd sort of look down your nose at them. But Cliff Bennett became a good friend of all of us, particularly Cliff Bennett. The Londoners, I still play with Brian Parrish. He's in fact he was here last weekend.
Yeah.
And so there's all there's still sort of loose connections.
Well, Frank Allen, who joined the Searchers and at the time was with Cliff Bennett and the Rebel Rousers, said that when he came over to Hamburg, he was amazed with these Liverpool musicians, the sort of fraternity they had, because they had their own newspaper. And he remembered thinking, I can't believe this, they've got Merseybeat, a newspaper about themselves.
Yeah. Well, Londoners couldn't manage it. They weren't sophisticated enough.
Yeah, of course, yeah. But it was something, that newspaper Merseybeat, didn't it? It brought you all together.
Yeah, it was, yeah. How is Bill, by the way?
Oh, Bill's fine. He's actually on our Beatles Liverpool DVD.
Oh, lovely.
Yeah. Now, what happened with you? Because you actually replaced Ringo Starr in Rory Storm and the Hurricanes. So how did you get that job?
I think I was just in the right place at the right time in the Iron Door. There was things, and I was young and different, I think, as opposed to everyone. It's sort of, it's formulaic, the whole the sequence of music making, and I did a different sort of thing, So,
Did your style of drum playing, you think, change because you've been in Hamburg?
Yeah, became louder. Yeah.
But and this is what Pete Best developed, presumably, with the Beatles, the sort of whack.
No, I think when you listen, and you, as I say, you probably know more about music than me. The American drummers were more sophisticated, more technical. So in order to copy all these records that Seaman brought over, all the Chuck Berry and all those sort of early rock records, the the capabilities of all of us wasn't like it was. So instead of doing all like boom, we managed to simplify it and create something new.
Yeah.
That sounds good, doesn't it?
And that's what Pete Best did when you heard him with the Beatles.
Yeah, and I think we all did it. We all simplified it, and because of non-amplification at the time. Adrian, what's his face? I've forgotten his name.
Adrian Barber.
Adrian Barber wasn't sort of in his high-tech mode then, but we all played. When you had to play quiet, you went quiet. There wasn't a guy going like that
On the faders, yeah.
And you moved away from the mic and went back. Yeah, that was all that. I used to sew up my school trousers so they became drain pipes, and have to take all the stitches out at like the next morning and iron them. Brown paper. Brown paper's great for ironing flannel, and then go to school.
Yeah. And the Star Club was the only club you played here, was it?
Yes. No, we did various other star clubs, and then we did the '63 Chuck Berry. Oh, I've just got out of jail tour.
Well, he didn't admit to anyone who'd been in jail, did he?
No, but well, he didn't talk to anyone,
Right. So you were backing him on stage, and he wouldn't sort of chat with you before you went on?
If you went around the museum, there's pictures of us doing it.
Yes.
Yeah.
I saw a picture of Chuck Berry at the Star Club, so you were backing him there, were
Yeah,
you?
but I was slightly thinner and better looking than darling.
Yeah. And did he just say, "This is in E," and off he went?
No, he didn't do anything.
Oh, right. He
We
just
knew his songs better than he did. He was not particularly nice. But we sorted him out in the end.
Yeah. And
6 against 1, wasn't it?
yeah. And who was the favourite performer that you saw at the Star Club then?
I suppose exciting-wise, Jerry Lee. Melodically, the Everly Brothers. And event-wise, as they call it here in Germany, Ray Charles Orchestra, which was just mine to see them in a club situation, the full band. James Brown he didn't play the Star Club. Who's the other one? They were all great. It was all individually good, because Manfred wouldn't have let them get in the door if they weren't good.
Yeah, I mean, you played at the Star Club for about 300 days between
That's right.
the middle of 62 to the end of 63 or so.
I didn't. 63. I played for the year of 63.
Yeah. So it's a long time to be away from England, really.
Yeah. But you could buy the paper at the station and stuff. Send your repayments to Hussies for your drums and all that bit, or to Rushworth. I can't remember where I got them. So.
And then after Rory Storm, you went to Lee Curtis and the All Stars, I think, did you? Oh, right.
Anyway, I'm not going to say something rude.
Okay.
KingSize broke up in London. Then after the Chuck tour, I think, that was the start of it. And then we formed the Eyes, and that was Lou Collins. He became an actor afterwards.
Of the Professionals, yes.
Yeah. He was the bass player we took, but he was really crap. So, and at the time, I was with Astrid, so Klaus Foreman had inherited Stewart's bass, and he agreed to jump in. And then John Franklin decided to stay here, so we became Paddy Klaus and Gibson under the misguidance of Brian. One of the unfortunate mistakes, I think.
Yeah, because I know Rory Storm said at one stage, after he'd had Ringo in the band and had you in the band, he said to Lee Curtis, "I make them and they take them."
I've got to go and make a sausage.
Yes, okay. And recently, you've recently been at the Indra, haven't you?
That's right. Yeah, a couple of weeks ago. NDR, which is the local staatliche Station, they're doing a doco on the Beatles and their presence in Hamburg and their effect on society and stuff like that. And they did a few extra shots in the Indra. Lee Curtis was the sort of headliner. There was a band called the Creepers, a fairly good cover band. And we filmed some documentary, what was it like then? I said, it's only a couple of 100 yards down the road. And then I sort of spontaneously got up and played with them when in their set 5 or 6 songs. So it was a hoot.
Great. Okay. Well, I look forward to sampling your cooking. Gibson Kemp, thanks very much indeed.
No problem. Cheers. My mouth's dry.
Oh, that was great, seeing my old friend Gibson Kemp again. And now we'll go and have a look at Ulf Krueger's shop. Well, as George Formby used to say, it's turned out nice again. It really is a very pleasant day here in Hamburg now, and I've come about 2 miles from St. Pauli, and we're at Ulf Krueger's memorabilia store. So I'm looking forward to seeing what's inside there, and actually hoping to meet a living British legend in there, because I'm expecting KingSize Taylor to meet me, and we'll have some more tales about the Star Club and the like. So here we are inside Ulf Krueger's store, and there, looking at some photographs, the legend himself, KingSize Taylor. Great.
How are you? Nice to see
you. Yeah, wonderful. I've seen you so often in Liverpool, of course, and now you're living in Hamburg.
We are. Yeah, I've been here for 7 weeks.
And are you glad about the move?
Absolutely. It's where I always wanted to live, really, deep down. When, you know, the more and more I thought about it, I really did miss Hamburg for such a long time.
Yeah. Well, you did live here for a bit in the 60s, didn't you?
Yeah, from 62 till 64, back end of 64 when I went home. And then I just got out of music all you know, completely. I mean, you know that more than anybody.
Indeed, I mean,
you came to get your first interview with me.
Nobody could have predicted the change in your life. I mean, 10 years ago, there you were in your butcher's shop, and you thought you'd retire as a butcher, and that was it. No ideas of singing again. And now it's changed completely.
Yeah, well, it changed really in 2000, the year 2000, new millennium. It started a new life for me because I went back into the music scene from the Merseyside end originally. My idea to do the 40th anniversary of the Star Club, which everybody had no faith in, and turned out to be a massive success. And once I came back to Hamburg in 2002, I realised that this is really where I belong. You know?
And when we went round the Große Freiheit, we saw the tombstone for the Star Club, as it were, with all the bands on it. And there's a little plaque by that, put up by the Mersey Cats, and you're mentioned on that. So that was your doing for the 40th anniversary of the Star Club?
Yeah, it wasn't actually the Mersey Cats that put the plaque up, it was Dave Jameson and myself. We designed it, had it done, got their permission to put it up, and we thought, well, if we're putting it up, it's got to be from all the musicians who, obviously, are Mersey Cats. Not just in membership, they are Mersey Cats by inheritance, aren't they? You know? So we put it up from all of us, really. So.
Now that exhibition that we've been to see at the Museum of Hamburg Life, that's called the Hamburg Sound. Do you think it is the Hamburg sound or the Liverpool sound?
I'll put this down and I'll get back, all right?
Okay, right. Difficult question, right?
No, I don't think it's a difficult question because I think basically the Hamburg sound is what became Merseybeat. When you think all the bands that came over here from 1960 on, in fact 1959, wasn't it, with Lord Woodbine, for instance, and they come over here, everybody took us to their hearts. And because we had to work so hard, we all came home polished bands. Doesn't matter who you want to pick out. Everybody came home polished. Because they were polished and came from Liverpool, Bill Harry in his wisdom puts the word Merseybeat on it. I still think it was a sound created in Hamburg right from the word go.
Yeah, well, it certainly would be for the Beatles. You went out to Hamburg, didn't you? You were already quite a polished band. The Beatles were almost nothing when they went.
Well, that's right. As Horst Fascist said, they were a strumming band when they came. You know? And when they went back, they're a polished group with the help of the bands around them more than anything. We were lucky because we came over and were quite polished, but I think when we had the change arounds and we got Howie in and you know, sort of made this bigger sound and finish up with two saxes, I think that was really the sound that we are known for, the recording dominoes.
And a lot of that Hamburg sound is a sort of whack, whack, whack of the drums, isn't it?
Yeah, well, somebody tried to analyse it, and it's not strict 4/4 time, like the American sort of proper rock and roll, as you might say. It's a mixture of 2/4 time alongside 4/4 time, which gives it that extra drive. And I think basically that was to create a bigger sound with what you had. I mean, you can't emulate Little Richard, who's got a 13-piece band with 3 guitars, a drummer and a bass player. So you've got to sort of work something out that extends this sound, and I think that was really the sound that was created here.
Yeah. So when you went into a club and say heard the Beatles, you'd hear that drum of Pete Best first.
Always the driving drum alongside, running parallel to the bass player. Yeah.
Yeah. And what about your own band? We've spoken to Gibson Kemp.
Yeah.
He was a good heavy drummer, was he?
It was great. Best, as far as I'm concerned, he was the best drummer ever to come out of Merseyside, you know, for rock and roll anyway.
Yeah.
Let's put it that way. Yeah, because he had this natural instinct, a total, a bit like what's his name, Animal off the Muppets. Because, I mean, if you watch the Muppets, that drummer in Animal is a great drummer, by the way.
Well, I always thought Animal from the Muppets was a sort of parody of Keith Moon.
Well, maybe so, but it was this drive, and it was an instinctive drive, which worked against him when we backed Chuck Berry, funnily enough.
Yes.
Because Gibson's timing was so good that Chuck Berry, as we all know, loves to lose and confuse his musicians that are backing him. He always has done. We toured with him for 29 days, and he couldn't get over the fact that whatever he did in these funny riffs that you see, chicka chicka, he could never lose Gibson, and he hated it. He really did. He had this passion of hatred to Gibson because he's like a 16-year-old drummer who is white, right? Because we were the first white band he'd ever played with, and he could not lose him. And it became an obsession to try and lose him through the whole tour. Right.
Well, shall we have a look at what's in this wonderful shop? Because you've not actually been in here before, have you?
No.
Although you know Ulf well. Yeah. Right, and there's some pictures of Chuck Berry down there, so that'll be around the time you were backing him.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the actual Star Club stage, Gibson on the drums.
Oh, yeah.
And I don't know where it is, but there's actually a better one where he's got the lads behind him, the 2 saxes and everything. So,
and you were playing with him guitar, were you? And
no, the lads just backed him.
Ah, right.
Yeah. Actually, on this particular tour, I wanted to back Carl Perkins.
Yes.
Carl Perkins is a great friend of mine, but because we'd backed Chuck at the Star Club, we had to do that. And the Nashville Teens backed Carl Perkins.
Yeah. Well, of course, you did a lot of Carl Perkins songs, didn't you? In your act?
Yeah.
Right. So there are a lot of photographs here of different acts, a lot of them associated with the Star Club.
Yeah.
We've got the Star Club pins here that you can get. You see, I've got one on myself here. Yeah. So this is something
I've got my original one at home.
Yeah, and this is something you have for protection, isn't it? Not that you need protection, of course.
Well, actually, I mean, don't forget, no matter what size you were, there were always people bigger than you anyway in Hamburg. And we were all working in an unknown quantity of a place is the way I think about it. But it was great because when you had that on, you never got asked to go in anywhere, a strip club or whatever. They just left you alone totally, you know.
Yeah.
So I've actually got my original one, as I say.
Right. And there's lots of Star Club memorabilia here. These intrigue me. The Star Club news, so rather like Mersey Beat. This was news about bands that won at the Star Club and the like, and so you'd have featured in a lot of those.
Yeah, but the great thing about the Star Club magazine is the fact that it actually had some pages in it. There's one that has a Lee Curtis on the front somewhere, and in that is an article about the Clayton Squares. So they were reporting on Liverpool through this magazine as well.
Yes.
Which was an interesting thing. I've actually got it at home somewhere.
Yeah. And there's Astrid, who you would know very well, wouldn't you?
Yes. Yeah. From the club. The thing with Astrid is Astrid knew the Beatles obviously before the Star Club opened, and I think the reason that the Dominoes were so well liked in Hamburg is we mixed with our public. They all came to the beer shop, and then we'd go back, and you know, we always had time for our public. With the Beatles and Astrid, when they finished, they disappeared because they had their own haunts from pre-Star Club days, and you never saw the Beatles in the beer shop, say, or very, very seldom. They would just disappear, and they're on at 12 o'clock, bang, they'd walk in at 10 to 12. And so they already had a clique that was outside the Star Club.
Yeah, so this has been very cool, isn't it, really? I suppose,
absolutely,
like
yeah.
that. And Gretel and Alphonse, that would be the place that you went to.
Yeah, we used to call it the beer shop, yeah.
So the German fans would just come up to you and chat to you.
Oh,
and,
that's right, yeah. And as I say, this is why when I come back here, it's like meeting friends more than a public. You know, they're not just fans, they are actually friends, these people.
And there's the Indra, the Kaiserkeller, the Top 10 and the Star Club.
Yeah.
Which of those clubs did you play?
I only played Star Club.
Right. So you didn't go to Hamburg until 1962 then?
62, yeah.
And so presumably, was this when you turned professional?
It was actually, yeah, because I was a butcher up till then, yeah. And everybody thought I was mental because I'd just finished my apprenticeship. I was a manager of a shop for the co-op, and just literally overnight just gave my notice in.
On the 27th of December 1960, you were playing the Netherlands Town Hall, and the Beatles were added to the bill, the Beatles direct from Germany.
Yeah.
So you were seeing this band, and you must have realised then that something had happened to them, and that was Hamburg. Yeah.
Without a doubt, I mean, that was the first time they came over with their leathers on, and it was like watching a different band. It really was. I mean, they were tight. They were getting as good as we were by that time, you know. No, they were good. I thought it was quite clever the way they got advertised. Is the fact the Beatles, who when they went away, everybody says they had this huge following before they went to Hamburg. Everybody had a huge following because the clubs you played at were the only clubs you could go to anyway. And when they came back, they were virtually advertised as a German group, the way the billing said, you know, it was the Beatles from Hamburg, Germany, are playing here tonight. And half the people that were in that hall didn't know the Beatles were actually English. They all thought they were a German band. And but they certainly came back, you know, an incredible band. Yeah. Plenty of power and everything, which at the end of the day they had them kicked out of them, didn't they?
Yeah.
You know, when you think about it.
Yeah. And one thing that is often said in the books is that the bands played such long hours at these clubs that you do extended versions of songs and things. Now, you recorded the Beatles in Hamburg on New Year's Eve 1962, and we saw we saw that in the museum yesterday. Yeah. But when you listen to that album, they're all doing pretty short versions of songs. I don't think any of them are more than 3 minutes. So it's not extended songs there. Do you know why that was?
No. Yeah, of course, yeah. I mean, you didn't really have to extend a song because you had what we used to do. We had a repertoire of about 392 songs or something. And what you do is you pick a set out of it that suited the time of day or whenever. If you were on from 3 till 4 in the morning, you just pick a set that was casual and nobody could care less about anyway, you know. So, and all the bands did that. If you had a set, you could play the same set 3 times a night because the audience changed all night. Yeah. I mean, you had the audience that came in from 6 till 9, 10 o'clock to 8. Anybody under 18 had to go anyway. Yeah. Gibson was 16 when he came here. I used to go on stage and make the announcement that everybody under 18 had to leave, and then we'd go straight on stage.
So you never went on stage drummerless?
No.
Right, well, let's have a look around. We've got the Star Club bags up here.
Yeah.
More Star Club memorabilia here. Sweatshirts for the Kaiserkeller and the Star Club with that 5-star logo on. Yeah, famous 5-star logo there. Yeah. And over here are various records and books and KingSize, I see you're on a box set here.
Yeah.
So these are live recordings that were done at the Star Club?
Star Club, yeah. Well, some of them are live, some of them are just done, as you might say, a live session in a studio. But, you know what I mean, a live session where we just went in and in an hour we knocked off an LP and just walked out and got a couple of bob and that was it. You know, so.
And did some of these sessions take place late at night after you've been playing in the Star Club?
Yeah, I mean, the Shakers LP, which really that is part of it.
Yeah, the Shakers being KingSize Taylor and the Dominoes.
Basically because we had 3 record contracts at the time, so we used the Shakers, KingSize Taylor and the Dominoes, the Ted Taylor Band, and Boots Wellington and his rubber band.
Right.
And if you can ever find a copy of that one, that's got Alex Harvey on. And must be a real cult pressing. If anybody's got it, give us a ring.
So if someone had a record company in those days and liked your band, you'd say, well, we'll just give ourselves another name, we'll do something.
Yeah, that's right, yeah. I mean, it's like a fella called Mike Warner and the All-Stars. I sang virtually all the tracks on his LP, which became a best-selling LP. Yeah. I never got any credit on it. And he's had a good life of it ever since, but it's virtually every track's got me on it.
And you were saying that some of these records were made late at night after you'd been at the Star Club.
I mean, the Shakers one was done, we left the Star Club at 6 o'clock, got to the Real Film Studio about 7:15, and 9:15 we'd come away with the whole LP laid down.
And what was your voice like after that?
Great.
Did you not suffer from the famous Hamburg throat?
I did to start off with, yeah, and then I found that the ale was better than anything else I was drinking, which used to cure my throat.
So there'd be some bands that came over, like yourself, you come over first of all and you do these enormously long sessions, several hours in the night, and then your voice goes, does it, for a bit? Yeah,
I mean, it's almost like paralysis of the throat, and you've just got to either work your way through it, or forget singing. I mean, a lot of bands used to come over, their lead singer, if you had to play 4 or 5 hours a night, would literally not perform. Somebody else would just have to do something, you know. And that was quite common, the old Hamburg throat. But basically it was a combination of how much you drank, you know, whatever else you took, and the long hours together. I mean, your body can only take so much at the end of the day, no matter what age you are.
And I suppose it can make your voice stronger as well as a result of it. I mean, I'm thinking of the power of Lee Curtis's voice, for example, the way he does Jezebel.
Yeah.
And he sort of developed it because he just had to do so much singing.
Well, exactly, yeah. And you get immune to these throats as well, because it's just like taking anything else. The more you take it, the more used you are to it. And as you say, the power in your voice certainly goes.
Yeah. And Freddie Marsden, the drummer with Jerry and the Pacemakers, did say to me that Jerry's voice was never the same after he'd been to Hamburg.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
in what way worse, you mean?
No, just different. I mean, it has a throaty texture to it, doesn't
That's
it?
Right,
a hoarseness.
Actually, yeah.
And he says he didn't have that before he went to Hamburg.
No, he didn't actually, no.
Yeah. I'll say, so we've got this set here, the Rattles, the Bats. The Bats actually had Stuart Sutcliffe with them for a short while.
They did, yes. Yeah.
And KingSize Taylor at the Star Club. And it's got a lovely booklet with it, hasn't it?
Yeah.
And is there a section of you on this, in this somewhere?
There we go.
Oh, there we are, yes. So there's KingSize back in 1962, 1963. And Gibson Kemp there, looking very young. Yeah. And Harry Casey, Bobby Thompson,
John Franklin.
and John Franklin. Yeah.
That was just after Howie had come and Sam had finished with the band.
And so you always wore suits on stage, did you?
Yeah.
Yeah.
We had a couple of bob back then.
Yes. But it's a nice photo, and definitely, yeah. And there's a great photo of you in here. Down here we've got the book that we saw yesterday, which is connected to the Hamburg sound.
Yeah.
And there's a photograph of you, let's see, it's around page 40 or so, I think it was. There we are, there's KingSize Taylor recording, and someone must have had it in for you here because you seem to be picking your nose.
Probably.
But where would this be?
That's actually in the Real Film Studio. That's when we were doing the Shakers album.
Oh, right. Well, that's such a famous album, so it's great to have an actual
Yeah.
picture of that. So that's about 5 in the morning.
Yeah, it will be. No. We left the club at 6. So that'll be about 8 o'clock in the morning, probably.
8 in the morning, and you're making an album.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you've got to pick your nose at 8 o'clock in the morning, haven't you?
Right. And here's Lineman with Ulf Krueger there, and he's backing Lonnie Donegan in that album there.
But it's nice to see that all the old-time Hamburg and German bands are now bringing stuff out, and some of them are really good, Spencer.
Did people ever see you and Tony Sheridan on stage together?
Oh yeah, would have done. Yeah. I don't think there's any footage of it, but we certainly were on stage together with Roy Young and Davy Jones.
Because he was quite an unpredictable performer, wasn't he? A bit like Chuck Berry, I suppose.
Yeah, in his way, definitely. He's got a great attitude, Tony, like most of the people. Chuck Berry, in his way, has got a great attitude. This is me. If you want to listen, you listen. If you don't, I'm not bothered, because Tony's like a lot of great artists who, through the years, have been exploited by, such as this, memorabilia, recordings of them when they didn't care whether they got recorded or not. And his attitude is a typical muso who's been exploited through the years, and people still want to pick him up for peanuts, you know. Yeah. And he's such a great artist. Without Tony Sheridan on the scene, I mean, you'd have had no Beatles anyway, so... Yeah.
And he always strikes me as someone, though, who didn't really care whether he made it or not. I mean, he said to me once that he was intrigued by the Searchers because they had such drive and really wanted to have hit records, and he never felt that way.
He didn't at the time, but I think now, later on in his years, he really regrets the fact that he didn't exploit the Beatles part. And he was somebody that at that time could have been such a big star, and he didn't grasp it. And you actually sent me an email about what my mistake was.
Oh, did I?
Yeah, my mistake was not being here in England. Of all the bands you said I should have made it, but my mistake was not being in England and not plugging the albums there.
Yes.
At that time, Spencer, there was nobody who wasn't in that clique who could ever have done anything in England. As far as I'm concerned, when the Beatles became the Beatles as the world then knew them, what happened is all the doors closed on Mersey beat bands. Yes. And Epstein killed Mersey beat. The Beatles never played Mersey beat in public after they'd finished being the raw band from the Star Club.
Yes, they were doing more polished songs of their own. Yes.
That was never Mersey beat.
Yes.
It didn't have the drive, it didn't have everything. And what happened is Epstein closed so many doors for us. I mean, even to the extent of buying my tour out in 1963. He actually bought my tour out and put us out of work. So what did I do? I ring up the Star Club. Yeah, great, come back, be the house band. And that's how we became the house band. Yes. We actually had a 31-day tour of England. Everywhere we turned up, he bought it.
And do you think this was a malicious action on his part?
Yeah. And I don't care if the family sue me because I can prove it. No, what happened with Brian Epstein, the whole story is, I was sitting with Gene Vincent and the Big Three in the Flunder. Well, Sue Hully it was. And Johnny Hutch jumps up from the table and in walks Brian Epstein, who was then negotiating with the Big Three. He'd come to Hamburg to sign me up as well. I was a bit with Gene Vincent, and Johnny Hutch jumps up and he says, KingSize, this is Brian Epstein. Brian Epstein, this is KingSize. And I said, well, who is he? And who was he? in December to 1962. He may as well have been my milkman, or I mean, all he was to me was a record salesman in his dad's shop.
I see.
So that really upset him because I didn't know who he was supposed to be, and he walked out. The first thing he did was he rang up Roy Tempest Agency, and he bought my whole tour out. My first show I turned up and Jerry was playing there. The next show the Beatles were playing there. So we were being sent home every time, So we just came back to Hamburg. Yeah. And that's what I mean. And we weren't the only band he did it to. Yeah. Mm-hmm. He did it to a lot of other bands because he couldn't stand, he could not take the chance on getting bands who were better than the Beatles out. Yes. I mean, imagine the Beatles turning up against my band at that time. Yeah. I mean, okay, they became popular because of the way they went, but at that time, they were no better than any other Merseybeat band. Mm. Yeah. You had the Undertakers, the Big Three. Look at the bands that were about. Yeah. But
it's interesting with your records, though. I mean, Stupidity strikes me as a record that could have been a really, really massive big hit. It was a hit in Germany. Yeah. And I think that if people had seen you on TV calling out, "Hey," at the start of that record,
they did once.
Yeah, but only once. You see, they didn't see it enough. If you've been in the UK and you've been pushing it and done it on 10 TV shows, you'd have been in the top 10 easy, I think.
Maybe so, but there again, I still think not because of the situation of the closed door situation. Mm-hmm. And I don't mean that maliciously, because I've been very happy throughout my life, and I wouldn't swap it for the world. Mm-hmm. And I'm back here, and I'm doing it again, or trying my best to do it again, and I'm just loving it. And what more can you get out of music than that?
Yep, so we've got many more things here. Alex Harvey, who you've actually mentioned, a Scottish wild man.
This is it. This is the rubber band one. Yeah, look, this first track here.
The Liverpool scene.
It's me and him talking to each other about Liverpool. Because he's on his way down from Scotland to Liverpool. Yeah. And this is the Dominoes on this.
But he was a pretty wild guy, wasn't he? So he would suit the Hamburg life, and presumably Gene Vincent, who loved guns and knives anyway, right, he'd be at home here.
Yeah. Gene Vincent always loved it. Mm-hmm.
So we've looked at the various albums here by English bands and by German bands. We've got a number of books down here. This intrigues me. I wish I could read German, because Klaus Voormann has written his autobiography, but has only written the book in German. There isn't an English translation of that, and that looks most intriguing. And down here, we've got photographs by the German photographer Jürgen Vollmer. And you can see there the picture, the real iconic picture of the Beatles in Hamburg, of John Lennon in that famous doorway. We looked at the doorway, and I was tempted to stand like that in the doorway, but decided I'd look terribly uncool if I did that, so I didn't. And here's a book about the Star Club, and pictures of Lee Curtis all. Now there you are, king size, in your fantastic jacket there.
Oh, my glory.
Yeah, that jacket can tell a story on its own, can't it?
Yeah, it could if it was still here,
yeah. Well, what's the story of that jacket? Because nobody else had a jacket like that.
No, there was a little small tailor shop not far from where I was working in Seaforth, and he used to specialise in making kilts and all this sort of thing. And officially, I don't think that's a black watch tartan, which I think it was illegal to have because it's a battle tartan. Mm-hmm. And I got him to make me the jacket out of it, and he agreed, and that's how it came by. But it was pure wool, and it was so hot to work in. Mm-hmm. But it became, like, as you say, the symbol of KingSize Taylor and his tartan jacket.
Yeah. And other pictures in this book. We got Chris Curtis of the Searchers there. There's Lee Curtis. We already mentioned that Star Club News that had Lee Curtis on the front. This really is a terrific book, showing all the records that came out on the Star Club label as well.
It actually comes out with a CD with this as well.
Marvellous. I mean, it's a great. And here, this is how we started the interview. That's really, right, Chuck Berry on stage at the Star Club. And can you guide us through this?
Yeah, you've got John Franklin here, Gibson Kemp, Chuck Berry, of course. If I'm not mistaken, that's Bobby at the back. And,
Bobby Thompson.
Yeah. And, of course, they've only taken the centre of it. You'd have had Dave Wood and Howie Casey on as well. But, good show. Great show.
Yeah, great time. So it's a very interesting collection of albums that you don't see in the British shops at all.
No, but it's like we said it with the photographs, the film footage, all the rest of it. And not only that, they've got virtually the whole lot of it on CD as well now, haven't they? You know, so they've got a complete record when you think of the Star Club and that particular time.
Yes, because you can get a complete feel of what it was like in the Star Club with these,
with
the
original
things.
sound, the original voices, and then the photographs as well.
Right, let's have a look at this. This is from the Star Club. These are Star Club reprints here that are available.
That was a great weekend.
Yeah. Ray Charles, yes, Jerry Lee Lewis at the Star Club, Lee Curtis there. Yeah. Very handsome lad. And what I love about this picture of the Beatles here is Paul McCartney in particular. He looks worn out.
He probably was.
Yeah. And Ray Charles at the Star Club here. Were you there when he was there?
Yeah, we were on the same bill.
Yeah.
But it was great because we went to the airport to meet him, and he flew in with his own Boeing 707, painted black with Ray Charles written down the side of it. He had 58 people on board. Great.
Right.
I've got some good photographs of him arriving at the back of the Star Club, actually.
Right. And Screaming Lord Sutch was on that day as well with Ray Charles, wasn't
right,
he? Because I know I interviewed him and he said he co-starred with Ray Charles.
That's right.
Yes.
Yeah, I think he went on. Manfred was always very cagey with Dave Sutch because he was such a madman on stage that he couldn't take a chance on the stage being wrecked for Ray Charles going on. So I think he went on at 3 o'clock in the morning or something, you know. But Ray Charles in the show.
And how mad would Screaming Lord Sutch be on stage?
Well, the first night he nearly lost the license of the club because he came on dressed as the caveman and this long hair, and he had a fire bucket full of sand, and put 2 gallons of petrol in the sand, lit it, and he was flicking his hair at it, through it, you know, as part of his act. Well, his hair was so heavy with sweat that it hit the side of the bucket and it went all over the audience and set the whole front of the stage on fire. So the club almost got closed down. And so that part of the act had to come out. But the likes of when he had Fingers Lee playing the piano then.
Oh, Freddie Fingers Lee, yes.
And they used to he'd be on the piano sort of doing Jack the Ripper, and he'd pull out this Bowie knife that was about 14-inch blade on it, and he actually stabbed him through the groin instead of between the legs, you know, he used to stab it. And of course the blood was pumping up like a fountain, and the crowd's going, great, yeah. I thought it was part of the act. And Freddie's actually pinned to the top of the Steinway's piano, you know. So, but absolute lunatic, but a great character. Everybody loved him in show business.
Right.
It was such a sad loss when he died.
Yeah. And just finally, what about your memories of the Beatles on stage at the Star Club? What comes to mind?
Well, if you think about it, when I actually knew the Beatles, which was the 62 era, I mean, I only played with them for 4 weeks in total on the same bill, because they wouldn't come over for the month, so they came 2 weeks in the August, I think it was, or the September, whenever, of 62, and insisted that they could do the Christmas one. And so 4 weeks we played with them. We associated with them. We had some good laughs with them. Music-wise, they were playing the same music as we were doing, or Big Three were doing. The Undertakers were there at the same time, by the way. So it was a great bill, full of Mersey people that we all knew, and it was more like having a reunion than anything else. But at the end of the day, I go back to what I said. When the Beatles came off stage, they disappeared. So apart from coming to have Christmas lunch at the Seamen's Mission with us, go for breakfast at the Seamen's Mission. We didn't really see a lot of them, lunch in the Mambo Shanky, but they were never sort of mixers with other bands.
Yeah. Do you have a favourite memory though, a song you particularly enjoyed them doing? When they did that song, you thought that's a great one?
No.
Oh, right.
Sorry about that.
Yeah.
Because most of the songs were ours anyway, Spencer. You know.
Right. Oh, you were doing them first?
Yeah. I mean, they covered all our songs, and that's been proved because if you listen to Twist and Shout and listen to the original one by Shan Romero, listen to ours, they follow ours, they don't follow the other one.
Yeah.
And that's been proved. It's 97% ours on an analysis machine, you know. So, I mean...
But at least... At least the Beatles had the good sense, though, not to be photographed with their fingers in their nose.
Well, that's true.
It.
That's true. And also, Margaret, funnily enough, said a funny statement. The Beatles were also sensible enough, when they became famous, never to be filmed backstage. Never. Nobody's ever seen a piece of footage of them coming off the stage, relaxing in a dressing room, dressed in a dressing room. Yeah. No problem. I bet you've never seen anything backstage where they're just relaxing after the show.
Yeah.
Why? Because the Beatles, the world saw we're not actually the Beatles.
Right.
and that's
carefully marketed.
Yeah.
Great. Well, KingSize Taylor, still rocking. Great to see you again.
And you too.
Yeah. Thank you. What a fabulous store that was, Ulf Krueger's store there, full of delightful Beatles memorabilia, and naturally I've bought a few things myself to take home with me. It was a pity that Ulf Krueger wasn't in the store himself, but of course we saw him earlier in the day and he's now busy writing songs. KingSize Taylor was there though, and it was wonderful to see him, and the fact that he's enjoying life so much now that he's moved to Hamburg. I hope we'll see him back in the UK doing a few shows before long. Well, this pretty well brings us to the end of our day in Hamburg, and it's time to head off for the central station.